There are nights on the highway when the cold doesn't just get into your jacket, it gets into the part of you that stopped feeling things a long time ago. Cole Ryder had ridden through 41 winters. He thought he had seen everything the dark could hide. He was wrong. What he found outside that diner, shivering in 6 inches of snow, clutching a torn cloth doll with both tiny fists, would cost him everything he had spent 15 years trying not to care about, and somewhere out there, more children were still waiting. This is their story, and his. If this hits you somewhere deep, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to know where in the world you're watching from. Now stay with me. You're going to want to hear every word of this. The storm came in from the northwest the way bad things always did. Quietly at first, just a gray pressure along the tree line. Then all at once, a wall of it, white and absolute and indifferent to anything human beings had built or planned or hoped for. By 10 o'clock that Thursday night, State Route 9 through Harlan County had become a corridor of frozen silence, the kind that swallowed headlights whole and turned familiar landmarks into pale suggestions of themselves. The gas station at Miller's Crossing had gone dark an hour earlier. The grain elevator at the edge of Colton Township was just a shadow behind moving snow, and the neon sign above Della's all-night diner, the one that had blinked a stubborn red open into the darkness for 31 years, flickered twice before settling back into its defiant glow. Cole Ryder saw that glow from a quarter-mile out and felt something in his chest he hadn't felt in a long time, something so ordinary it almost hurt. Relief. The simple animal relief of a light in the dark when the dark had been winning. He pulled the Harley off the highway and into the gravel lot, the engine cutting down to a low throb, and then nothing. And for a moment the only sound was the wind driving snow against the leather of his jacket and the creak of the bike's cooling metal. He sat there without moving. That was a habit he'd kept from 12 years of riding with the Iron Shepherd MC. Never walk into any space without reading it first. The lot had 4 other vehicles. A rusted Silverado with a cracked windshield, 2 sedans that looked like they'd been sitting since Tuesday, and a county sheriff's cruiser parked sideways near the far end of the building, engine off, no lights. Cole studied the cruiser for a moment longer than the other vehicles. Then he climbed off the bike. He was 44 years old, built like a man who had done hard physical work for most of his life and carried the injuries to prove it. A healed fracture in his left cheekbone that gave his face an asymmetry people noticed without being able to name. A right shoulder that had been reconstructed twice, once after a roadside accident outside Reno, once after something that hadn't been an accident at all. He wore a Carhartt thermal under his riding jacket, both of them dark with road grime, and his boots were the same pair he'd had resoled 3 times over 11 years. There was nothing about Cole Ryder that announced itself. He had spent a long time making sure of that. He was almost to the diner door when he heard the sound. Not crying. That was the thing that stopped him, the detail that his brain snagged on before the rest of him caught up. It wasn't crying. It was smaller than that. A kind of controlled, deliberate breathing. The sound a child makes when they have already used up all the crying they had and what's left is just the mechanical business of continuing to exist. He stopped, turned. She was on the far side of his bike, partially sheltered from the wind by the building's corner, sitting on an upturned milk crate someone had left beside the emergency exit. She was wearing a puffy vest over a sweater that was too thin for October, let alone December, and she had no hat, no gloves, no scarf. Her dark hair was pressed flat against her skull by the wet. She was holding a cloth doll against her chest with both arms the way you hold the last thing you have left in the world. And she was watching him with eyes that did not ask for anything. She had stopped expecting things from adults. That was visible in the way she looked at him. Not afraid exactly, just waiting to be disappointed again. Cole stood there for 3 full seconds, without speaking. "Hey," he said finally. His voice came out rougher than he intended. It always did in cold weather. She didn't answer. "How long you been out here?" A pause. Then barely audible. "A while." He looked at the emergency exit door behind her, locked. He looked at the parking lot, the highway, the wall of moving snow beyond it. He looked back at her. "Where's your mom?" he asked, because that was the question you asked. The socially correct first move, the thing that kept a man from having to reckon with what it meant that a 6-year-old was sitting alone in a blizzard at 10 o'clock at night. Her expression didn't change. She's not here. Dad? Not here either. He crouched down so he wasn't towering over her. The gravel was frozen solid under his boots. Up close, her lips had a faint bluish tinge that he didn't like. Her fingers, where they curled around the doll, were the color of old wax. "What's your name?" he asked. She thought about that for a moment, not like she didn't know it, but like she was deciding whether to give it to him. "Emma," she said finally. "Emma?" He said it back without inflection. "I'm Cole. I'm going to get you inside, okay?" She looked at the diner door, then back at him. "Is it safe in there?" The question landed on him like something dropped from a height. He was a grown man in a motorcycle jacket with a 3-day beard and a face that had taken its share of rearranging, and she was asking him if it was safe in there, not the other way around. "Yeah," he said, "it's safe." She considered this. Then she stood up, still holding the doll, and waited for him to lead the way. The inside of Della's was exactly what it always had been. 4 booths along the window, a counter with 8 stools, a pass-through window to a kitchen that smelled of burnt coffee and bacon grease, fluorescent lights that turned everything slightly yellow, and the particular brand of silence that belongs to diners at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday when the storm outside has beaten the roads into submission. Behind the counter, a woman in her 60s with iron-gray hair and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead was refilling a napkin dispenser. She looked up when they came in. Her eyes went to Emma. Something in her expression shifted, not softened exactly. Went careful in the way of someone who has seen a specific kind of thing before. "Booth in the back," she said. Not a question. Cole guided Emma to the rear corner booth where the light was steadiest and the view of the door was clearest. Emma slid in against the wall without being told, which told him something. She had learned to put solid things at her back. The woman from the counter came over with a mug of hot chocolate and set it in front of Emma without making a production of it. Emma looked at it for a moment, then at the woman, then picked it up with both hands. Her fingers had started to pink up already in the warmth. "She yours?" the woman asked Cole, not unkindly. "No." "You know who she belongs to?" Cole looked at Emma. "Emma, is there someone I can call?" Emma set the mug down. She turned it slowly on the table. "My aunt," she said, "but she doesn't always answer." "What about a neighbor, a teacher, somebody from school?" She kept turning the mug. "I've been out of school for 2 weeks." The silence that followed that statement was its own kind of sound. Cole looked at the woman behind the counter. She had the kind of face that didn't show a lot but held everything. "You got a phone book?" he asked. "Got a cell phone signal that comes and goes," she said. "Landline too if you need it, but—" She paused. "There's a deputy in that cruiser out front. Fell asleep about an hour ago. You want? I can wake him." Emma's hands went still on the mug. It was subtle, a slight tightening of the fingers, a careful nothing that replaced the quiet movement. Cole noticed it. The woman behind the counter noticed it too. "Not yet," Cole said. She nodded once and went back to the counter. Cole ordered coffee he didn't need and a grilled cheese he wasn't sure Emma would eat and sat across from her in the booth and didn't push anything. That was another habit from a long time. Silence was information, if you let it be. Emma ate the grilled cheese in careful bites, tearing the crusts off first and lining them up along the edge of the plate in a row. The doll sat beside her on the seat, propped against the wall with its cloth head tipped slightly sideways. "What's her name?" Cole said, nodding at the doll. Emma glanced at it. "May." "How long have you had her?" "Forever." A pause. "My mom gave her to me. Before." He didn't ask before what. Outside, the storm pressed against the window glass. Inside, the fluorescent light hummed. The kitchen radio murmured something country and indistinct. Emma ate her grilled cheese and Cole drank his coffee, and the night moved around them like water around stones. And somewhere under the ordinary surface of it all, something was very wrong, and both of them knew it. It was Emma who broke the silence. "Can you stay here until morning?" she asked. Not looking at him, still working on a crust. "I don't know who's safe." Cole put his coffee mug down slowly. What do you mean, you don't know who's safe? She finally looked at him. Her eyes were dark and steady in the yellow light. I mean, I don't know who's safe, she said, like it was the simplest thing in the world, like she had learned to stop being surprised by how complicated that made everything. He stayed. He didn't plan to, not in any formal way. He was 200 miles from his cabin outside Kenner Ridge, riding toward nothing in particular the way he often did in winter when the roads were clear enough to ride and the cabin got too quiet. He had not planned to stop at Della's, had not planned to find a frozen child on a milk crate, had not planned to be sitting in a cracked vinyl booth at 11 o'clock watching a 6-year-old try to reassemble herself after whatever had been done to whatever her life had looked like before. But he stayed. Around 11:30, he stepped outside to make a call. The snow had eased, but the cold had deepened. His breath came out in long white plumes. He called Hector first. Hector Vega was 61 years old, former Army mechanic, current president of the Iron Shepherd MC's Kenner Ridge chapter, and the closest thing Cole had to a person he trusted without reservation. He picked up on the second ring. "You're not dead," Hector said. "Not yet. Listen." Cole told him what he'd found, the whole thing, fast and plain, the milk crate, the doll, the out-of-school 2 weeks, the way she'd asked if the diner was safe. There was a long silence on the other end. "Did you say anything about where she's been?" Hector asked. "Not much. Enough." "You try calling the county?" "There's a deputy asleep in his cruiser outside. That's not the same as calling the county." "Hector." Cole turned so his back was to the wind. She went still when the woman mentioned the deputy. Not scared, just still. Like she was making herself small. Another silence. Longer this time. "You think she's got reason to be quiet around law?" "I think she's got reason to be careful around everyone. I think someone taught her that." Hector exhaled. It was a sound Cole knew. The sound of a man recalibrating what the night was going to require of him. "Bring her out to the lodge," he said finally. "We'll figure the rest out in the light. That's a 2-hour ride in a blizzard. You got a better option at 11:30 on a Thursday?" Cole looked through the diner window. Emma was still in the booth. She had finished the grilled cheese. She was sitting with her hands in her lap, watching the door. Watching for him, he realized. She was watching to see if he came back. He went back inside. When he told her he was going to take her somewhere safer and warmer, somewhere with people he trusted, she didn't argue. She picked up May, held her against her chest, and said, "Okay." Then, after a pause, "Are they like you?" "Like me how?" She looked at the patches on his jacket. His riding jacket was hanging on the hook at the end of the booth, the Iron Shepherd emblem visible, a stylized ram's skull with the words Kenner Ridge arced beneath it. She studied it for a moment. "Big," she said, "and quiet." Something in his chest moved in a way he wasn't prepared for. "Yeah," he said. "Like me." Wait, the deputy in the cruiser had woken up by the time Cole got Emma geared for the ride. He'd found a spare thermal in his saddlebag and a wool blanket from the diner that the iron-haired woman, whose name was Della, yes, the actual Della, had pressed on him without being asked. Cole had written his name and the general direction he was heading on a napkin and left it with Della, with instructions to give it to the deputy if anything happened. It wasn't much of a safety net. It was the best he had. The deputy, a young man with a soft chin and the slightly unfocused look of someone who had been startled out of deep sleep, climbed out of the cruiser as Cole was strapping Emma in front of him on the Harley. "Hey," the deputy said. He had his hand on his belt, not on his weapon, but near enough. "Is that what is... Sir, I'm going to need you to..." "Her name's Emma Brooks," Cole said without turning around. "She's been out of school for 2 weeks. She was outside in the storm when I found her. I don't know her parents' location. She needs warmth and follow-up tomorrow." A pause. "Sir, I can take her." Emma's hands tightened on Cole's jacket. He felt it, small fingers, desperate grip. "I'm taking her somewhere warm," Cole said. "She knows where she's going. Della's got my name. You can find me in the morning." He started the bike before the deputy could reply. The engine caught immediately, a low, throaty sound that rolled out across the frozen lot. In the side mirror, he could see the deputy standing beside his cruiser, hands still on his belt, snow accumulating on his shoulders, and the expression on his face was the particular expression of a man who knows something has moved past him but can't quite say how. Cole pulled onto the highway. Emma tucked her face against his back and held on. The ride to the Iron Shepherd Lodge took 2 hours and 14 minutes in those conditions, a fact that registered in Cole's body as a sustained, bone-deep effort of keeping the Harley upright on roads that had gone from plowed to packed snow to uncertain ice as they moved away from the county highway and into the hills. He rode with his whole attention on the road, keeping the speed steady, leaning into curves before he felt them, reading the texture of the surface through his hands and thighs in the way that 12 years of riding had made second nature. Somewhere in the second hour, Emma fell asleep against his back. He could feel the subtle weight of her shift and relax, could feel her grip loosen slightly from desperate to just present, and that loosening did something to him that he didn't have words for. The lodge was a converted hunting camp that the chapter had owned for 11 years. A main building of hewn log and rough-cut lumber, 2 outbuildings, a generator shed, and a covered area for vehicles that everyone called the barn, though it had never housed a single animal. It sat at the end of a road that the county had essentially forgotten, bordered on 3 sides by national forest, and on the 4th by a rocky creek that froze in January and thawed in March. It was ugly and drafty and occasionally smelled of wood smoke and motor oil and old coffee, and it was one of the only places on Earth where Cole felt like the air pressure was right. The lights were on when he pulled in. Hector was standing on the covered porch with his arms crossed and his breath making clouds. He was a compact man with steel-gray hair cropped close, a goatee that had gone fully white in the last 2 years, and the kind of stillness that belongs to people who have spent time in situations where stillness is the difference between okay and not okay. Behind him, Cole could see the shapes of 2 other people through the window. Cole cut the engine. Emma stirred but didn't wake. Hector came down the porch steps and stopped a few feet away, looking at the sleeping child strapped against Cole's chest with the wool blanket wrapped around her. He looked at her for a long moment without speaking. "How old?" he said finally. "6, I think, maybe 7. Hector looked at Cole. "She say what happened?" "Not much. 2 weeks out of school. Doesn't trust law. Was sitting in the snow by herself." Hector nodded slowly, the kind of nod that means a lot is being absorbed and sorted and filed for later. Then he said, "Jimmy's got the back room heated. Rosie's making soup." He paused. "How are you?" It was such a simple question. Cole wasn't sure he had a simple answer. "I'm fine," he said, which was not an answer at all, and Hector knew it. Inside the lodge, the Iron Shepherd chapter's Kenner Ridge members had arranged themselves with the instinctive tact of men who had spent enough time in crises to know what helped and what didn't. Jimmy Okafor, 57, Vietnam vet's son, former long-haul trucker, the chapter's sergeant-at-arms, was in the back hallway with the door to the small bedroom standing open, showing the made bed and the bedside lamp with its warm amber light. He took one look at Emma and went immediately to the kitchen without a word. Rosie Fuentes, not a member but a permanent fixture, the woman who had run the lodge's informal kitchen for 8 years, whose relationship with the chapter's treasurer was either a secret or an open secret depending on who you asked, appeared in the kitchen doorway with a bowl of something that smelled of tomatoes and garlic, and the particular combination of spices that she associated with cold nights. Emma woke up when Cole set her down in the hallway. She stood there with May under one arm, looking at the space around her with the systematic, slightly too old for her age way she had of looking at things, checking exits, checking faces, calculating. "It's okay," Cole said. It felt inadequate. It was all he had. She looked at Rosie and the soup. She looked at Jimmy standing in the kitchen doorway with his hands in his pockets and his big, quiet presence that managed to be somehow unthreatening in the way of all very large men who have made peace with the fact that the world is afraid of them. She looked at Hector, who had come in behind them and was now sitting at the far end of the main room's long table with a cup of coffee and a posture that communicated clearly that he was not going to rush anything. Then she looked at Cole. "Is this your home?" she asked. "One of them." She considered that. Then she walked toward Rosie and the soup. The men redistributed themselves without discussion. The Iron Shepherd chapter was not an organization given to lengthy verbal coordination. Hector stayed at the table. Jimmy disappeared into one of the back rooms. Cole hung his jacket and sat near the fire that someone had built in the stone hearth. Rosie fed Emma soup at the kitchen table and did not ask her any questions, which was either wisdom or mercy or both. It was almost 2 a.m. when Rosie appeared in the doorway and told Cole quietly that Emma was asleep in the back room. He went to check. The child was in the bed with the blanket pulled up to her chin and May tucked in beside her, and her face in sleep had shed whatever it carried while she was awake. The watchfulness, the calculation, the careful nothing. She looked like what she was. A little kid who was exhausted and had found somewhere warm. Cole stood in the doorway for a moment. Then he pulled the door almost closed and went back to the main room. Hector was still at the table. He had refilled his coffee. He looked at Cole over the rim of the mug. "Sit down," he said. Cole sat. "Talk me through what you know." "I know what I told you on the phone." "Walk me through it again, slower." So Cole did. He went through it from the moment he heard the sound outside the diner, the particular careful breathing, to the milk crate, the doll, the 2 weeks out of school, the question about whether the diner was safe, the stillness when the deputy was mentioned, the grip on his jacket when the deputy offered to take her. He said it all flat and plain, which was the only way he knew how to say things. Hector listened without interrupting. When Cole finished, Hector was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'm going to make some calls in the morning. Discreet ones. People I trust." "Social services? I know some people at the county health office. Not the same chain. I also know a woman who runs a child advocacy nonprofit out of Shelton. She'll know what questions to ask and who to ask them to without it going through the front door of the sheriff's office first." Cole looked at him. "You think there's a reason to avoid the front door?" Hector set down his mug. He had the expression he got when he was about to say something he would rather not have to say. "I think a little girl sat in a snowstorm rather than walk into a diner and ask an adult for help. I think she looked at a deputy and went quiet in a way you noticed. I think she's been carrying something very heavy for a 6-year-old, and I think we want to be careful about where we set it down." The fire shifted. A log settled. Outside, the wind had dropped, but the cold had taken on a physical presence, the kind you could feel through the walls. "She asked me if she could stay until morning," Cole said. "She asked if I could stay until morning, because she didn't know who was safe." Hector was quiet. "I didn't know what to say to that." "You brought her here," Hector said. "That's what you said." There was a sound from the hallway. Both men went still. A small shuffling, then nothing. Then the sound of the backroom door opening a crack. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway. She had the blanket wrapped around her shoulders and May in her arms. She looked at Cole, then at Hector, then back at Cole. "I heard talking," she said. "We're here," Cole said. "Go back to sleep." She stood there for another moment, evaluating. Then she said, in the voice of someone who has been let down enough times to require confirmation, "You'll still be here when I wake up?" The question put something in the room that hadn't been there before. Cole held her gaze. "Yeah," he said. "I'll be here." She went back to bed. Hector looked at his coffee cup. Cole looked at the fire. Neither of them said anything for a while. "You know what this means," Hector said eventually. "The morning won't be easy." "I know. If the system's already failed her once, it'll try to take her and put her somewhere on a list somewhere, and that list will get shuffled and she'll be waiting on that list 6 months from now, wondering what happened to the guy who said he'd be there." Cole said nothing. "That's not me telling you what to do," Hector said. "That's me saying, decide now. Before she wakes up and looks at you again with those eyes. Because if you let her believe something and then it doesn't happen, that's its own kind of damage." Cole stared at the fire for a long time. He thought about his cabin outside Kenner Ridge, which had 1 bedroom and a kitchen table with 2 chairs he'd never needed both of, and a coffee maker that made 1 cup at a time because 1 cup at a time had always been enough. He thought about the last 12 years, which had been a systematic process of needing less and less from the world and offering the world less and less in return. He thought about the woman whose name he had stopped saying out loud about 8 years ago, and the boy who had been 3 years old when Cole lost both of them in the same week to the same senseless machinery of chance and bad timing, and the way that grief had calcified into something so hard and load-bearing that he'd stopped being able to distinguish it from his actual skeleton. He thought about a small girl sitting in the snow, holding a doll, doing the controlled, careful breathing of someone who had used up all their crying. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. It wasn't a decision exactly. It was more like an acknowledgement of something that had already happened. Hector nodded once, with the weight of a man who understands that some things are settled in ways that can't be undone. "Get some sleep," he said. "I'll take the table." Cole went to the couch. He didn't sleep for a long time. Through the thin wall of the lodge, he could hear Emma's breathing in the back room. Slow, steady now, deepened into actual rest. Outside, the snow had stopped. The world had gone to a white, silent nothing. And in that nothing, somewhere back down State Route 9, a county deputy was trying to decide what to put in his incident report. And somewhere further back than that, in a direction Cole couldn't name, whatever had brought Emma to that milk crate in the snow was still in motion. He didn't know what it was yet. He was starting to understand that it was bigger than one frozen child outside one diner on one winter night. And in the back room of an Iron Shepherd Lodge on a forgotten road in the hills above Harlan County, a little girl slept with her doll and trusted that a man she had known for 4 hours would still be there in the morning. Cole closed his eyes. Dawn was 5 hours away, and when it came, everything that had been quiet was going to start making noise. Dawn came into the lodge the way it always did in December, reluctantly, without warmth, pushing gray light through the frost-filmed windows like something that had given up halfway through the effort. Cole was awake before it arrived. He had been awake for most of the night, lying on the couch with his forearm across his eyes, and his mind doing the thing it did when he tried to force it to stop, cycling through everything in a loop, the milk crate, the doll, the deputy's headlights sweeping the lot as they pulled away, Emma's fingers on his jacket, the question she'd asked that had no good answer. "You'll still be here when I wake up?" He was still there. He heard her before he saw her. The soft, careful sound of small feet on the plank floor, trying not to make noise. The lodge creaked in the cold the way old wood always did, and Emma navigated its sounds instinctively, stopping when it creaked, resuming when it settled, moving through the unfamiliar space with the practiced quiet of a child who had learned that being heard was not always a safe thing. She appeared in the kitchen doorway and found Cole already sitting up on the couch with his elbows on his knees and a cup of coffee in his hands. She stood there for a moment, May tucked under her arm, taking inventory of the room the way she always did, checking, calibrating. "Morning," Cole said. "Morning." She looked around. "Where's the other man?" "Hector, he's in the back. He'll be up soon." She came into the room and sat in the chair nearest the dead fire. Not on the couch near Cole, but close enough. She set May on the armrest and pulled her knees up to her chest and looked at the gray ash in the hearth. "Did you sleep?" Cole asked. "A little." A pause. "Did you?" "A little." She nodded like that was the expected answer. Then she said without looking at him, "I heard you talking last night, after I went back to bed." Cole set his coffee down carefully. "What did you hear?" "Just voices, not the words." She picked at a thread on her sleeve. "Were you talking about me?" "Yeah." She absorbed that without visible reaction. "Are you going to call someone like the county?" "We're going to call some people we trust, not the county directly." She looked at him then, quick, assessing. "Why not the county directly?" It was the right question, and it deserved an honest answer. "Because we want to make sure you end up somewhere safe," he said, "not just somewhere official." The distinction seemed to land. She turned it over for a moment, then she went back to looking at the hearth. "My aunt's in Shelton," she said. "Aunt Carla. She's my mom's sister. She tried to get me before, but she works 2 jobs and they said she wasn't. They said her apartment was too small." She said the last part with a flatness that indicated she was quoting something she'd been told in language she'd had to learn to hold without fully understanding. "They put me with someone else, Mrs. Guard. That's where I was." Cole was very still. "That's where you were before the diner?" he said. Emma's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I left." How long ago? She thought about it. Before the snow started, so 3 days ago. 3 days. She had been out for 3 days. In December. Cole kept his face even and his voice level through an effort that cost him something he couldn't measure. Where did you sleep? A church porch the first night. There was a blanket someone left. A pause. Then a gas station bathroom. The person working let me stay in the back, but then their manager came and I had to go. She said all of this in the tone of someone filing a report. Just logistics. Just the sequence of events. Then I found the diner. Hector appeared in the hallway doorway. He had clearly been there long enough to hear the last part. His face was its usual carefully controlled thing, but his eyes were doing something else entirely. He came into the room and sat at the table without speaking, and the three of them existed in the same space for a long moment while the lodge settled around them in the cold and the pale light continued its reluctant arrival through the windows. Emma, Hector said. His voice was the one Cole had heard him use exactly twice before. Once with a crying drunk on the shoulder of I-77, once with a kid whose car he'd pulled out of a ditch at 3 a.m. Steady, no performance in it. Are you hurt? Physically hurt? Anywhere? She looked at him for a moment, then she shook her head. Okay. He folded his hands on the table. I'm going to make some calls after breakfast. There's a woman named Patricia Solis who works with kids in Shelton. She knows how to find your aunt through the right channels. But I need to make sure I'm calling the right people, which means I'm going to ask you a few things, and you can tell me as much or as little as you want. There's no wrong answer. Emma looked at him steadily. She reminded Cole of a much older person in a very small body, someone who had been interviewed before and knew what the shape of it felt like. Okay, she said. Rosie appeared from the back, which meant she had also been awake, had probably heard, and had made the calculation that what was needed now was breakfast and the particular grace of pretending that was the only thing anyone needed. She made eggs and toast and set them on the table without ceremony and poured juice for Emma and coffee for the men. And for 20 minutes, the lodge held the ordinary business of morning, and Emma ate 2 pieces of toast with strawberry jam and half a scrambled egg, and fed a small piece of toast crust to May under the table when she thought no one was watching. Hector watched, said nothing. The calls started at 8. Cole was outside in the covered area that everyone called the barn when the first real problem of the day materialized, not through Hector's calls, but through the sound of tires on the frozen road outside. He heard the engine before he saw the vehicle. A county car, not a cruiser. A blue sedan with the Harlan County Health and Human Services seal on the door. 2 people got out. A woman in a heavy coat with a lanyard and a clipboard. A man Cole didn't recognize in a fleece pullover with county ID clipped to it. The woman had the look of someone who had driven 2 hours in the cold to do a job she had done many times before and was operating on professional autopilot. The man looked newer, less settled in the autopilot. Cole stepped out of the barn. Morning, the woman said. She glanced at his jacket, at the iron shepherd patch. She didn't visibly react, but something in her posture adjusted. I'm Sandra Park, Harlan County Child Protective Services. We received a report last night about a minor found unaccompanied on Route 9. We have information she may be at this location. Who gave you this location? Cole asked. I'm not able to share source information. Cole looked at the county car, looked at the house. The deputy, he thought. The deputy had done the math on the direction they'd ridden and the roads available and had made a call before dawn. She's inside, Cole said. She's safe. She's had breakfast. I'll need to see her, Sandra Park said. Hector's on the phone with Patricia Solis right now, Cole said. You know Pat Solis? Something shifted very slightly in Sandra Park's expression. I know who she is. Then wait 5 minutes. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she looked down at her clipboard. I'm going to need to come inside, Mr. Ryder. Mr. Ryder. This is a child welfare matter. I have an obligation. I know what you have, Cole said. I'm asking for 5 minutes. The man in the fleece said nothing, which was the smart move. Sandra Park looked at Cole with the expression of someone taking a very deliberate kind of professional patience. 5 minutes, she said. Cole went inside. Hector was off the phone. He was standing at the kitchen window looking out at the county car with his arms crossed and his coffee cup in one hand and the particular stillness of a man deciding something. Pat Solis is driving from Shelton, he said without turning around. She knows Sandra Park. She said Park is by the book, but she's not. She's not the problem. The problem is what the book says to do with Emma right now, which is return her to supervised placement. He paused. Mrs. Guard. Cole said nothing. Emma's aunt, Carla Brooks, has a pending application for kinship placement that got stalled 6 weeks ago. Pat is going to try to fast-track it, but that's days minimum, maybe weeks. So in the meantime, the book says Emma goes back to where she ran from. The fire in the hearth had been rebuilt and was burning steadily now. Emma was in the back room with Rosie. Cole could hear Rosie's voice, low, unhurried, the particular rhythm of someone telling a story to make time pass. We're not sending her back there, Cole said. Hector turned around. He looked at Cole with the full weight of 23 years of knowing him. Cole? I'm not sending her back to a placement she ran away from. 3 days in December, a church porch. I know. Then what are we saying? Hector set his coffee down. I'm saying we need to be careful about how we do this. Sandra Park is standing outside with county authority, and she's not wrong, procedurally. If we refuse to cooperate, we become the story. We become two aging bikers who took a child from a county deputy and are now refusing to hand her over. That is not a story that ends well for Emma. Cole understood that. He hated that he understood it. So what's the move? We let Park come in. We are present and we are cooperative. We do not leave Emma alone with her, and I call Judge Marisol Ferreira in Shelton in the next 4 minutes. Cole looked at him. You know a judge. I know everyone worth knowing in 3 counties, Cole. That's been my job for 11 years. He was already picking up his phone. Go keep Emma company. Cole went to the back room. Emma was sitting on the floor with Rosie, who had found a deck of cards somewhere and was in the middle of teaching her a game that involved a lot of deliberate shuffling and an unclear scoring system. Emma was concentrating on the cards with the full force of her attention, which was the kind of concentration that comes from wanting to think about something simple. She looked up when Cole came in. She read his face in about half a second. Someone's here, she said. It wasn't a question. Someone from the county, her name is Sandra. She needs to see that you're okay. Emma looked back at the cards. And then what? Cole crouched down. We're working on that. She picked up a card and held it. I'm not going back to Mrs. Guard's, she said. Flat. Final. The same tone she'd used to tell him her aunt's apartment was too small. The tone of someone who has been told what is going to happen to them enough times that they've learned to state the unacceptable thing plainly before anyone else can soften it into something they're supposed to accept. I hear you, Cole said. She looked at him. Do you? The question landed harder than it should have. He held her gaze. Yeah, he said. I do. She put the card down. Okay, she said. Not I believe you. Just okay. The difference was everything. Sandra Park came inside with the efficiency of a person who had learned not to make her assessments visible on her face until she was ready to make them official. She shook Hector's hand in the kitchen doorway, exchanged a look with him that contained more than Cole could fully decode, and came to the back room with her clipboard at her side rather than in front of her, which Cole noted as a deliberate choice. She sat on the edge of the bed and talked to Emma for 12 minutes. Cole and Hector waited in the hall. Through the closed door he could hear Sandra Park's voice, measured, professionally warm, the voice of someone trained to make children feel heard without making promises. He could hear Emma answering, quieter, less of her sentences audible, which told him Emma was choosing her words. Still calculating. When Sandra Park came out, she pulled the door mostly closed behind her and stood in the hallway with her clipboard in front of her now. She looked at Cole, then at Hector. She's physically okay, she said. She shouldn't be, given 3 days in those conditions, but she is. A pause. She's coherent. She's oriented. She doesn't appear to be in acute distress. Another pause. Smaller. She's also 7 years old going on 40, which is a flag in itself. We know, Hector said. She doesn't want to go back to the guard placement. Sandra Park said it without inflection. Just the fact of it. We know that too, Hector said. I spoke with Patricia Solis an hour ago. Something shifted in Sandra Park's posture, very slight, controlled. I also received a call this morning from Judge Ferreira's office. She looked at Hector with an expression that was not quite surprise and not quite appreciation, and occupied the careful professional space between them. The Carla Brooks kinship application is being reviewed on an emergency basis. That's good news, Ishor, Hector said. It's movement, Sandra Park said carefully. It's not resolution. Until there's resolution, my obligation is satisfied if Emma is in a safe placement with responsible adults in a secure environment, Hector said, which she is. Sandra Park held his gaze for a long moment. Cole could feel the calculation happening, Park weighing the forms against the reality, against the calls she'd received that morning, against whatever she'd seen in 12 minutes with Emma. I'm going to need to document this location, she said finally. I'm going to need contact information, and I'm going to need to check in by phone tomorrow morning. You'll have all of that, Hector said. She looked at Cole one more time, at the patch on his jacket, which he hadn't bothered to cover. She made whatever final calculation she was making and tucked her clipboard under her arm. She mentioned you, she said to Cole. He waited. She said, Park paused, like she was deciding how much of this was relevant to her report. She said you stayed. Cole said nothing. Sandra Park left. The Blue County car reversed out of the road and disappeared into the tree line. For a moment, the three of them, Cole, Hector, and Jimmy Okafor, who had materialized silently from somewhere in the lodge's back half at the sound of an official vehicle, stood in the covered doorway and watched the road. Then Jimmy said, That went better than it could have. It went the way it went, Hector said. It's not over. He was right. It wasn't over. The second problem arrived at noon in the form of a phone call on Hector's cell that lasted 4 minutes and left Hector sitting at the table staring at the middle distance with the particular expression of someone who has been handed information they would rather not have had to carry. Cole was on the porch when Hector came out to find him. The cold had clarified into something hard and dry. The snow from the night before pressed flat and bright under a sky that had gone the pale-washed blue of December in the hills. Cole was standing with his coffee and looking at the tree line and not thinking about anything in particular, which was the only thing he'd ever been good at faking. Hector stood beside him, didn't say anything for a moment. That was Tommy Reese, he said finally. Cole knew the name. Tommy Reese ran a salvage yard outside Millhaven and was the kind of person who knew things it was useful to know. Not a criminal exactly, but someone who existed close enough to the edges of things to have developed a useful peripheral vision. He's been hearing something for about a month, Hector said, through channels, about kids in the county, missing ones specifically, not just runaways, not just the kind of cases that fall through the system. He stopped. He says there have been 3 in the last 4 months, all from the foster system, all from a cluster of placements in the northeast part of the county. Cole turned to look at him. He doesn't have more than that. He doesn't know where they went or who. Hector kept his eyes on the tree line. But he says the guard placement is one of the cluster. The quiet between them took on a different quality. Emma ran, Cole said. Yeah, the others didn't. Hector didn't answer, which was its own answer. Cole turned back toward the tree line. His jaw was tight. He could feel his pulse in the place behind his ear that always registered first when something was moving toward dangerous. He thought about Emma on the floor playing cards with Rosie, her face turned down to the simple task of counting suits and watching numbers, her back deliberately against the wall. We need to talk to her, Cole said. Carefully, Hector said. Carefully, but we need to know what she knows about where she was, about Mrs. Guard, about the other kids. Hector was quiet for a moment. She's 7. I know. If we ask her the wrong things the wrong way, I know, Hector. Cole turned around. I know. I'm not a caseworker. I'm not going to interview her. I'm going to sit with her and let her talk if she wants to talk. That's not the same thing. Hector looked at him for a long moment, the kind of look that was taking inventory of something. Cole, I need to know where your head is at. What does that mean? It means I need to know if this is about Emma, Hector said, or if it's about someone else. The words landed in Cole's chest like a stone into still water. He felt the ripple of it go all the way through. He had known Hector Vega for 23 years. There were not many things between them that had never been said out loud. The boy was one of them. The boy and the woman and the accident that had been called an accident. They had existed for 11 years in the unspoken space between two men who didn't talk about the things that couldn't be fixed. "Don't," Cole said. "I have to," Hector said, "because I've watched you for 2 days and I've watched you with her, and I need to know that you're seeing Emma Brooks, not someone else." The cold was very specific on Cole's face. He could feel each degree of it. "I see her," he said. "I see exactly who she is." "Then tell me." Cole looked at him. "She's a 7-year-old who sat in the snow for 3 days because she trusted the alternative less than the cold. She's been in a placement where something was wrong enough that she ran without a plan, in December, with nothing but a doll and whatever she had in her head. She's got an aunt in Shelton who wanted her and got blocked by a form about square footage." He stopped. "She asked me if I'd still be there in the morning. That's who I see." Hector held his gaze for a long moment, then he nodded, once. The kind of nod that closed something. "Okay," he said. But something had been moved between them, and they both knew it. It was Jimmy who sat with Emma that afternoon. Cole had expected Hector to handle it, or Rosie, but Jimmy appeared in the doorway of the back room with a deck of cards. Not the same one as earlier, a different one, older, the edges soft with handling, and looked at Emma and said, "You play war?" Emma looked at the cards. "Yes." "Good." He sat on the floor. "Because nobody's told me a good war story in a month and I'm getting bored." Emma almost smiled. It didn't quite make it all the way, but it got close. Cole watched from the hallway. Jimmy was the largest person in the lodge by a margin that made most rooms feel smaller when he was in them. He was 6'2", 240 pounds, with hands that could span an engine block and a voice that, when he chose to use it, came from somewhere low in his chest that you felt before you heard. He'd been born to a father who'd come back from war in 2 pieces, the physical one and the one that was mostly missing. And he had spent 40 years trying to understand what had been taken from that man, which had led him to the military, and then to long-haul trucking, and then to the Iron Shepherd, and then to the particular life of a man who had seen enough hard things that the ordinary hard things no longer scared him. He dealt the cards and told Emma about the worst flat tire he'd ever gotten, which was on a 2-lane in the Nevada desert at 1 a.m. with no signal and a load of refrigerated produce and a spare that turned out to be the wrong size. He made it funny without making it fake, and somewhere around the third hand of war, Emma started talking. Not about Mrs. Guard. Not directly. She talked about the other kids at the placement. There were 3 others, an 8-year-old named Danny, who cried at night, a 12-year-old named Sasha, who didn't speak to anyone, but had once slipped Emma an extra granola bar without explanation, and a boy whose name Emma didn't know because he'd arrived 2 weeks before she left and hadn't been told to the children, which was itself a thing she described matter-of-factly. "He came at night, and we weren't supposed to know about him." Jimmy played his cards and said, "That happen a lot? New ones coming at night?" Emma considered. "Sometimes. And sometimes they left at night, too. Mrs. Guard would say they got moved to a better place, but she said it in the same voice she used when she was lying about other things." Cole pressed his back against the hall wall and breathed through his nose. "How'd you know it was the lying voice?" Jimmy said, casual, just a big man losing at cards. Emma flipped a card. "Because when she was telling the truth, she didn't look at anything. When she was lying, she looked at the window." A pause. "My mom did that too, looked at windows when she lied." She said it without apparent sadness, just observation, another item in a catalog she had been building for 7 years. Jimmy absorbed this without a single tell. He turned a card. "Danny's still there when you left?" Emma looked at her hand of cards. "I don't know," she said. "I hope so." Then quieter. "I don't know." That night, after Emma was in bed and Rosie had settled in the back room to sleep close by in case she was needed, the 3 men, Cole, Hector, Jimmy, sat at the long table in the lodge's main room with the fire low and 3 cups of coffee going cold between them. The lodge had 2 other members who rode through regularly, Dutch, who was in Florida for the winter visiting his daughter, and Priest, whose real name was Calvin Marsh, and who had once studied to be a doctor before the thing that had happened to him had happened, and who now kept the chapter's medical kit stocked to a level that had proven useful on several occasions. Hector had called both of them. Dutch was unreachable. Priest had said he'd drive up in the morning. 3 kids, Jimmy said. Maybe more. All from the Northeast cluster, all from placements that were officially supervised. Which means someone in the system is either looking the other way or part of the machinery, Hector said. Which is why Emma went quiet when she saw the cruiser. Which is why she sat in the snow for 3 days instead of walking into a county office. The fire shifted. Cole watched the embers. Tommy Reese said there's a name, Hector said. He hadn't mentioned this on the porch. He was mentioning it now because Priest was coming and the information needed to be on the table. He's not sure. He said it came through twice from 2 different sources over 3 months. A name associated with the movement, not law enforcement. Someone adjacent. Adjacent how? Jimmy said. Transport? Private? Someone with vehicles and access and a reason to move between county facilities without being questioned. Hector paused. The name Tommy has is Darren Fole. Jimmy looked at Cole. Cole said nothing, but something in his face changed. The others saw it. You know that name? Hector said. Cole ran his thumb along the edge of his coffee cup. I don't know him, he said, but I know who he is. The room waited. He ran contract transport for the county about 4 years ago. Vehicles mostly, occasional medical transport. I knew someone who contracted through the same company. She said he made her uncomfortable. He stopped. She reported it. Nothing happened. Jimmy said, Who was she? Cole didn't answer immediately. Doesn't matter, he said finally. She's not there to ask now. Neither of the other men pushed on that. The fire went lower. Outside, the temperature was dropping through the floor of itself, the cold finding the lodge's gaps and testing them. Cole could hear the wind in the tree line beginning its slow build. He was about to say something else, he wasn't sure what, when his phone buzzed on the table. He looked at the screen. Unknown number, county area code. He picked it up. Mr. Ryder? A man's voice. Not old, not young, deliberately paced, the kind of voice that comes from having practiced being calm. I think we need to talk about the little girl. Cole's hand tightened on the phone. Who is this? Someone who has a professional interest in making sure Emma is returned to appropriate care. A pause, just a beat too long. I've been speaking with Mrs. Guard. She's quite concerned. I'll bet she is. Mr. Ryder. The voice got quieter, which was worse than if it had gotten louder. You don't know what you're involved in. I'm giving you the opportunity to step back before the situation becomes more complicated than it needs to be. Cole looked at Hector and Jimmy. They were both watching him. He kept his voice level. Give me your name. That's not necessary right now. Then this conversation is over. Emma is not your child, Mr. Ryder. The voice was still quiet, still controlled, but something under it had shifted. Not threatening exactly, but specific in a way that a generic threat is not. Specific in a way that said, I know who you are, which means I've been looking. You have no legal standing. You have a criminal record. You are a member of an organization that has been under federal observation. Everything you've done in the last 24 hours has been documented. Cole sat very still. If you return Emma to appropriate care in the next 12 hours, the voice said, none of that documentation becomes relevant. If you don't, well, there are several agencies that would be very interested in what happened on Route 9 last night. The call ended. Cole put the phone down. He was aware of his own pulse in a way he hadn't been 30 seconds ago. Hector said, Talk. Cole told them. Word for word, the whole thing, flat and plain. When he finished, the lodge held the specific silence of a room where 3 men are simultaneously recalibrating everything they thought they knew about the shape of the next several days. Jimmy said very quietly, They know we have her. Someone does, Cole said. The deputy, Hector said. It wasn't an accusation, just a chain of information laid out. The deputy called the county called the placement called Darren Fole, Cole said. Or someone connected to him. Hector stood up. He walked to the window and stood there looking out at the frozen dark of the road. The muscle in his jaw was working steadily, which was the only external sign that he was doing what Cole recognized as the inside version of what other men did with their fists. "They're going to move," Hector said. "I know. If there are other kids in those placements and they think the system is compromised, I know, Hector. We're not equipped for this." Hector turned around. He said it without softening it, which was the only way he ever said anything. This is beyond what we can handle with phone calls to Pat Solis and a judge we know in Shelton. This is organized. This is connected. This is someone with enough access to the system to make calls and pull records and know your jacket size before I've even called Dutch. "I know," Cole said. "So what do we do?" Cole looked at the door of the back room, behind which a 7-year-old girl was sleeping with her cloth doll in the only warm bed she'd had in 3 days. He thought about Danny, who cried at night. He thought about Sasha and the granola bar. He thought about a boy with no name who had arrived in the dark and might already be somewhere else. He thought about what it cost a person to stay put when the machinery started moving. "We don't send her back," Cole said. It came out quiet. Absolute. Hector looked at him. "Cole, we don't send her back," Cole said again, "and we find out what happened to the others." Jimmy looked at the table. He looked at his hands. He said slowly, "There are things we can do that law can't. Things we can find out through channels that don't touch the front door of any county office." He said it carefully, methodically, the way he did everything. "But if we do this, if we go into this, we're not just looking at one night on a back road. We're looking at something with teeth." "I know," Cole said. "I need to hear you say it clear," Hector said. "Because once we start, we don't get to unstart it. If there are people in the system, if there are people connected to official functions who are doing whatever they're doing to those kids, and we start asking questions through our channels, they will know. And they will not call us politely on the phone a second time." Cole looked at him. He looked at Jimmy. He looked at the closed door. "Start making your calls," he said. Hector held his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then he picked up his phone. And in the back room, Emma Brooks slept through all of it, May tucked under her chin, breath slow and steady and trusting. While outside the lodge, the temperature fell to 12 degrees, and the road through the trees lay empty and white and waiting. And somewhere in Harlan County, a man whose voice Cole would not forget was picking up his own phone and beginning to make his own kind of... The call had ended 40 seconds ago, and the lodge was still holding the exact silence it had fallen into when Cole put the phone down. The particular silence of a room where men are thinking fast, and none of them want to be the first one to say the thing they're all thinking, because saying it makes it real in a way that can't be walked back. Hector had his phone in his hand but hadn't dialed yet. Jimmy was looking at his own hands on the table, turning them over once, like checking them for something. Cole was looking at the fire, which had burned down to coals, just the orange breath of it left, pulsing slow in the dark of the hearth. Then Hector dialed. He stepped into the kitchen and pulled the door almost closed. Cole could hear his voice, low, clipped, no wasted syllables, but not the words. Jimmy got up and went to the front window and stood there looking at the road. The road was empty. The road had been empty all night. That didn't mean anything anymore. "They've got someone watching the county," Jimmy said, not turning around. "Has to be. How else do they move that fast?" "Deputy calls the county. County calls the placement. Placement has a number to call." Cole's voice came out flat. "It's not surveillance. It's a chain. They built a chain. A chain in the child welfare system. In part of it." Jimmy said nothing for a moment. Then, "How many people does that take?" "Not many," Cole said. "If you've got the right 2 or 3 people at the right 2 or 3 points, you don't need many." Hector came back from the kitchen. His face was the controlled thing it always was, but his eyes were moving faster than usual, which was a tell Cole had learned to read over 2 decades. "I called Priest," he said. "He's leaving Millhaven now. 4 hours? Maybe 3.5 if the roads are clear." He sat down. "I also called a contact at the state AG's office. Left a message. No guarantees on a callback tonight." "We need more than a message," Cole said. "I know what we need. I'm working with what I have at midnight in December." Hector set his phone on the table. "Tommy Reese, I'm going to call him again, But I need you to tell me everything you know about Darren Fole first, not just what you said earlier, everything. Cole had been waiting for that. He looked at the fire. The coals breathed. He thought about how to say the next part and decided the only way was straight through it. Her name was Vera, he said. Vera Cushman. She was a contract coordinator for a transport company out of Mill Haven called Brixton Logistics. This was 4 years ago. She coordinated vehicle dispatch, county contracts mostly, medical transport, facility runs. Darren Fole drove for them. Senior driver. He had county facility clearance. Cole paused. Let the next part form. Vera said he made her uncomfortable in a specific way. Not toward her, toward how he talked about the placements, the kids. She said there was something wrong in how he referenced them. Not overt, nothing you could put a finger on, just wrong in the way that some things are wrong before you can name why. She reported it, Hector said. She reported it to her supervisor at Brixton, who reported it to the county contract liaison, who filed it and did nothing. Cole's jaw tightened. 6 weeks later, Vera was in an accident on Route 14. Single vehicle, night, clear roads, sober driver. She went through a guardrail on a curve she'd driven 300 times. The room went very quiet. She didn't survive, Cole said. Jimmy turned away from the window. Hector was absolutely still. The investigation said mechanical failure, Cole said. Brake line. They called it wear and age. The car was 11 years old, high mileage, maintenance records were incomplete. He stopped. He could hear his own voice doing the thing it did when he was working to keep it level, going flatter, slower, each word placed with deliberate care. I never believed it. I spent 8 months not believing it and not being able to prove anything else. And then I stopped. I stopped being able to carry it, and I put it somewhere I didn't look at, and I rode, and I kept riding. Hector said quietly, How did you know Vera? Cole looked at him. She was a friend. It was not the whole truth, and Hector knew it was not the whole truth, and neither of them said anything else about it. Jimmy sat back down. He sat down slowly, like a man lowering a heavy thing. Cole, he said, if Fole is connected to what happened to Vera, I don't know that he is, Cole said. I know his name came up twice in Tommy Reese's channels in connection with missing children from county placements. I know he worked for a company that had county access. I know Vera reported something about him and died 6 weeks later. He picked up his cold coffee and put it down again without drinking it. That's what I know. That's enough, Jimmy said. It's not enough for anything official. I'm not talking about official. The word landed in the room and stayed there. Hector looked at Jimmy, then at Cole. The fire had gone fully dark now, just the faint heat of spent coals. Outside, the wind had picked up again, throwing light ghosts of snow against the window. Let me call Tommy, Hector said finally. He called Tommy Reese at 12:47 in the morning. Tommy picked up, which meant Tommy had been awake, which meant Tommy had been expecting the call. That told Cole something about how seriously Tommy was taking the information he'd passed along. The conversation lasted 9 minutes. Cole and Jimmy sat at the table and heard one side of it. Hector's voice, controlled, asking short, specific questions and receiving answers that made his face do things it didn't usually do. When it ended, Hector sat down and looked at the table for a moment before speaking. Tommy has a name for the operation, he said. Not the official name, Sim. A name that came through. The word people use for it when they reference it in the circles where it gets referenced. He paused. Clearinghouse. What does that mean? Jimmy said. It means exactly what it sounds like. A point through which things pass and get sorted and redistributed. Hector's voice was completely flat. Children from the foster system, specifically from placements in 2 counties, Harlan and Bridger. Specifically from placements with particular caseworkers, particular supervisors, the kids who get lost in the system, the ones whose files are thin, whose family connections are broken or complicated, whose absence can be explained. He stopped. Tommy says there are 7 names on the list he's heard, 7 children in the last 14 months from the Northeast cluster who were officially transferred to other placements and whose actual whereabouts are currently unknown. The number 7 landed in the room like a stone dropped from a height. 7. Cole thought about Danny, who cried at night. He thought about Sasha and the granola bar. He thought about the boy with no name who had arrived in the dark. Emma had been the one who ran. "This goes above Foal," Cole said. "Way above," Hector said. "Tommy thinks Foal is transport, low level, the person who drives and keeps his mouth shut and gets paid and doesn't ask what happens after he drops." He paused. "Which means there's someone above transport, someone who identifies the children, selects them, arranges the paperwork, someone inside the welfare system, and someone above that who manages where they go." The wind hit the window. The lodge settled. "We need to know who that is," Cole said. "I know. Not eventually. Now. Because if they think we have Emma and Emma knows something—" "I know, Cole." "Then she's not safe here," Cole said. "Not after that phone call." The silence that followed was a different kind than the ones before it. It had a specific gravity to it, the kind of silence that precedes decisions that can't be unmade. It was into that silence that Priest arrived. Calvin Marsh, Priest, drove a 12-year-old Bronco and had a face that looked like it had been designed for a different, harder era. He was 51, lean in the way of men who forget to eat when they're thinking, with close-cropped hair gone mostly gray and pale eyes that had the disconcerting quality of seeing more than they appeared to be looking at. He had done 3 years of medical school before withdrawing, for reasons the chapter knew and did not discuss, and in the subsequent 20 years he had accumulated a practical knowledge of trauma medicine, county court procedures, investigative methodology, and human psychology that made him either the most useful person in any crisis or the most unsettling one to sit across from, depending on which side of a question you were on. He came in, noted the faces in the room, poured himself coffee without being offered it, sat down and said, "Tell me everything." They told him everything. All of it, from the milk crate to the phone call to Tommy Reese's 9 minutes. Priest listened without interruption, without visible reaction, turning his coffee cup a quarter rotation every few minutes in what Cole recognized as his processing rhythm. When they finished, Priest said, "The phone call is the critical thing." "The 7 missing children are the critical thing," Jimmy said. "Yes, and the phone call tells us how much they know and how fast they move, which is the thing that determines whether the 7 missing children remain at 7 or become 8. He set his cup down. They called Cole within hours of the county report. That means their connection to the county system is real-time or close to it. That means sitting here is not a static situation. It's a position they can locate, monitor, and apply pressure to. He looked at Cole. What did the voice sound like? Cole described it. The deliberate pace, the practiced calm, the way it had gotten quieter rather than louder when it wanted to emphasize something. Priest nodded slowly. Not law enforcement, he said. Law enforcement threatens differently. This is someone who manages people, manages situations. He paused. Did he use your full name? Just Ryder. Did he know Hector? Hector looked up. He knew enough to call Cole's phone, Priest said. Cole's number isn't public. He got it through the county report, which means the report included Cole's contact information, which means the county intake process passed that information to someone who passed it to whoever made that call, which means the connection between their operation and the welfare intake process is close. How close? Jimmy said. Priest looked at him steadily. Someone who works in that office, he said, or someone who has someone who does. The words fell into the room and nobody picked them up for a long moment. Cole was looking at the closed door of the back room. He was thinking about the sequence Sandra Park had gone through when she arrived. The professional warmth, the clipboard at her side, the careful 12 minutes, the information she'd then communicated to whoever she'd reported to. He was thinking about how quickly Judge Ferreira's office had called, which had seemed like a good thing at the time. He was thinking about the speed of everything, how fast the machinery had moved in both directions. The judge's call and the phone threat, both arriving before noon. Sandra Park, he said. The room went still. I'm not saying it's her, Cole said immediately. I'm saying she came here. She saw Emma. She filed a report. That report went somewhere. And within 6 hours of her filing it, someone called my phone to tell me to return Emma to appropriate care. He paused. I'm saying someone in the chain between Park and wherever her report went is connected to this. Priest said, or Park herself. Or Park herself. Hector stood up. I need to call Pat Solis right now, because if there's a compromised link in the county intake chain, then the kinship application for Carla Brooks is visible to whoever is compromised, Priest said, and the aunt is suddenly a variable they can factor in. Hector was already dialing. Cole sat with the specific feeling of a situation that had been moving in one direction and had just turned and was now moving in a different direction, and the difference between those directions was the difference between a problem you could manage and a problem that managed you. He heard Rosie's voice from the back, low, questioning. He heard Emma's voice respond. She was awake. He wasn't surprised. She slept like someone whose body had learned not to trust deep sleep. He went to the back room. Emma was sitting up in bed with May in her lap. The lamp was on, the amber light making the room smaller and warmer than it was. Rosie was sitting in the chair by the window with her hands folded, the posture of a woman who has been keeping watch and is not going to pretend otherwise. Emma looked at Cole. Her eyes went to his face and did the thing they did, the quick read, the calculation, the landing on whatever conclusion the evidence supported. Something happened, she said. We're working through some things, Cole said. That's what adults say when something happened and they don't want to tell you. He sat on the edge of the bed. He looked at her. He thought about what Hector had said on the porch. She's 7. And he thought about what 7 meant for Emma Brooks, who had been keeping herself alive in December for 3 days on a church porch and a gas station bathroom, who cataloged lying voices, who slept with her back to the wall, who had known the difference between a lying voice and a truth voice before most children her age knew what a lie cost. Someone called me, he said. Someone who wants you returned to Mrs. Guard's. Emma's hands tightened on May. Not panic, just readiness. Who? We don't know yet. We're finding out. Is it the man with the van? She said. Cole went completely still. Emma, he said, and his voice came out barely above a level thing. What man with a van? She looked at him, and her face was doing the thing it did when she was deciding how much to give. He watched her make the decision in real time, watched her weigh whatever it cost against whatever she thought it was worth to say it. He came sometimes, she said, at night, when Mrs. Guard thought we were asleep. A white van. He and Mrs. Guard talked in the kitchen. One time I heard her say a name. She paused. She was looking at May's cloth face. Fole. She called him Mr. Fole. Cole's heart did something that had nothing to do with his heart and everything to do with the 11 months he had spent not believing what they'd told him about a brake line on Route 14. Did he ever talk to you? Cole said. Mr. Fole, did he ever come into your room or… No. She said it quickly. Certain. But Danny said he came in. She went quiet for a moment. Danny said Mr. Fole told him he was going to a better place. Danny was happy about it. She stroked May's hair. Danny wasn't there the next morning. Cole stood up. He stood up because he needed to move, and he could not move inside this room without scaring her, and he needed to not scare her. He walked to the doorway. He stopped there with his hand on the frame and his back to the room, and he breathed. 1 breath, 2 breaths, the controlled mechanical kind, the kind he'd learned when the other kind stopped being possible. He turned around. Emma was watching him. Rosie was watching him. You did right by telling me that, he said. It came out steady. Somehow. You did exactly right. He went back to the main room. He sat down at the table and put both hands flat on it and looked at them. Priest looked at his face and said nothing. Jimmy looked at his face and looked away. Hector was still on the phone. Fole, Cole said. He was there. At the placement. He talked to Danny. He stopped. Let the next part come. Danny was gone the next morning. The room held that. How does Emma know this? Priest said. She heard the name. She saw the van. The other boy told her about the conversation. Priest exhaled through his nose. It was the smallest sound. She's a witness, he said. Not in a legal sense yet, but she's a witness to his presence at that placement. She can place him there. If there's an investigation, a real one, not a county one, that's material. Which means she's not just a child they want returned to managed custody, Cole said. She's a liability. The word landed. The phone call, Jimmy said slowly. It wasn't about returning her to care. It was about getting her back where they could control what she said. Nobody disagreed. Hector finished his call. He put his phone on the table and looked at it for a moment. Patsolis knows, he said. She's pulling Carla Brooks' application out of the county database and moving it through a different office. State level. It'll take longer, but it won't go through the same chain. He stopped. She also said she got a call this morning from Sandra Park. About Emma, Cole said. About Cole, Hector said. The distinction landed like a flat hand. Park was asking about Cole's background, Hector said. His record, his club affiliation, specific questions. Pat said it didn't feel like a welfare assessment. It felt like someone was building something. He looked at Cole. She said Park was reading from notes, like she'd been given the questions. Cole looked at the table. He thought about Sandra Park in the hallway, clipboard at her side. The professional warmth, the 12 minutes with Emma. He thought about her saying, "She mentioned you." He thought about her face when she said it, which had been the careful neutral of a professional, which he had read as discretion and now he read as something else. They already knew who I was before Park arrived, he said. The call last night had my record, my club affiliation, the federal observation. He looked at Hector. Park didn't give them that. They already had it, which means they identified me from the deputy's report. Park's visit was different. Park's visit was about Emma. About what Emma told her, Priest said. About what Emma knows. Priest stood up. He went to the kitchen window and looked out at the road. When he turned back, his pale eyes had the quality Cole had seen once before, 2 years ago, when a situation had moved past complicated into something that required a different kind of thinking entirely. We have to move her, Priest said. Tonight. Not tomorrow, not at dawn. Tonight. Move her where? Jimmy said. Somewhere they can't locate through any chain connected to what they already know. Not the lodge. Not anyone in the county contact list. Not anyone who has appeared in any report filed in the last 48 hours. He looked at Hector. You have a place? Hector was quiet for a moment. Dutch's sister, he said. Maya. She's in Caldwell, 3 counties over. She fostered for 6 years. She knows how to keep a child calm, and she doesn't have a single connection to Harlan County. Does she have a phone registered in this county? No. Does she know anyone who does? Not that I know of. Call her, Priest said. Cole stood up. I'll tell Emma. Cole. Hector's voice stopped him at the doorway. Cole turned. Hector's face was doing the thing it did when he was about to say something that cost him something to say. If we move her, if we do this, we are past the point of cooperation with the county system. We are past phone calls to judges and contacts in the AG office. We are making a decision to operate outside the official process to protect a child whose official process is compromised. I know. That has consequences. For the chapter. For you specifically. I know that too. Then I need you to be certain, Hector said. Not certain like you were certain she'd be here in the morning. Certain the way you're certain about things that cost something. Cole looked at him for a long moment. The fire was dead. The coffee was cold. Outside, the road lay empty and white under a sky that had no stars in it, just the flat underbelly of clouds pressing down on the hills, and somewhere in those hills, in the towns and county offices and official records of those towns and county offices, a machinery was running that had been running for 14 months and had already taken 7 children from the places they should have been safe and put them somewhere no one could currently find them. And in the back room, Emma Brooks was sitting in lamplight with her cloth doll, waiting for a man she had known for less than 2 days to come back through the door. Move her, Cole said. Hector picked up his phone, and in the kitchen, through the almost closed door, Cole heard Rosie's voice begin the careful, gentle, impossible work of telling a 7-year-old girl that they were going somewhere new, and Emma's voice asking the question Cole already knew she would ask. The same question, always the same question, the only question she had left that still, the question Emma had been about to ask died in the air between Rosie and the lamplight, because Cole came back through the door before she could finish it, and whatever she saw in his face when he came through that door, not fear, not anger, but something underneath both of those things, something that lived below the vocabulary of ordinary emotion, made her stop and look at him with the full weight of her attention. "We're going somewhere new," Cole said. He didn't dress it up. "Tonight, right now." Emma looked at him for 3 seconds, then she picked up May and stood up from the bed. That was all. No argument, no tears. She had already packed herself down to the minimum of what she needed to carry years ago in ways that had nothing to do with luggage. Rosie handed her the wool blanket. Emma wrapped it around her shoulders like she'd been doing it all her life. They moved fast after that. Priest took the Bronco with Rosie and Emma. Emma in the back seat with May and the blanket, Rosie beside her, the engine running, and the heat already going before Cole had finished telling Emma they were moving. Hector had reached Maya Okafor in Caldwell, Dutch's sister, a retired school aide with a 2-bedroom house on a dead-end road and the kind of calm that came from having fostered 11 children over 6 years. Maya had said yes in the first 10 seconds of the call, which told Cole everything he needed to know about her. The road to Caldwell was 3 hours if you took the state highway. Priest would take the county roads. Longer, less visible. Cole watched the Bronco's taillights disappear into the tree line and felt something in his chest perform an action he didn't have a clean name for. Not relief, because relief required safety, and they were not safe, but something adjacent to relief. The bodily acknowledgement that the most important thing was currently moving away from the danger rather than toward it. Then he turned around. Hector and Jimmy were standing in the lodge doorway. The cold had found another gear overnight, the kind of cold that didn't announce itself, just occupied you. Their breath came in slow clouds. "Talk to me about Foal," Cole said. "Tommy Reese has a location," Hector said. "A warehouse facility outside Millhaven. Brixton Logistics leases it. It's been listed as inactive since last March, but Tommy says there's been vehicle activity there in the last 2 weeks. Night traffic." 2 weeks, Jimmy said, right before Emma ran. Nobody said what that meant. They all heard it anyway. "We can't go in there without knowing what we're going into," Cole said. "I know. And we can't call it in through the county." "I know that too." "So what are we doing?" Jimmy said. Hector looked at Cole. The specific look of a man who has already made a decision and is waiting for the other person in the room to catch up to it. "Tommy says there's someone, a state investigator who has been building a case on child welfare fraud in this region for 7 months. Independent, not county, not sheriff. State AG's office. Her name is Detective Reyes, Marta Reyes." He paused. "She's been trying to get someone inside the network to talk for 3 months. She has circumstantial evidence. She has financial records. She doesn't have a witness who can place Foal at a specific placement." He looked steadily at Cole. "She doesn't have Emma." The word landed the way Hector had meant it to land. "Emma's 7, Cole said. "Emma heard the name? Emma saw the van. Emma knows Danny is gone." Hector's voice was even, not cold, just clear. "That's not nothing, Cole. In the right investigative context, with the right protections in place, she's 7 years old, Hector. I know how old she is. She's been running for 3 days. She has not slept a full night in... Cole." Hector's voice didn't rise, stayed exactly where it was. "I'm not saying put her in a room with a detective tonight. I'm saying we make contact with Reyes. We tell her what we have. We let her tell us what she can do with it, and how fast she can do it, and what protection she can put around Emma while she does it." He paused. "Because right now, we are 3 men in a lodge that a compromised county chain can locate, and the people who made that phone call are not going to wait until morning to decide their next move." Cole looked at the road where the Bronco's taillights had been. He thought about Emma wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. The absolute economy of it. The complete absence of complaint. "Call Reyes," he said. Hector called her at 2:41 in the morning, and she picked up on the 3rd ring, which meant she was awake, which meant the case was alive enough in her that sleep was a secondary concern. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. Cole and Jimmy sat at the table and heard Hector's side of it, and filled in the architecture of the other side from his responses and his silences. When he hung up, he sat down. "She's been watching Brixton Logistics for 4 months, he said. "She has financial records showing irregular payments to 3 county welfare employees. She has vehicle logs showing Foal's transport activity, correlates with the disappearance dates of 5 of the 7 children Tommy named." He stopped, looked at his hands. She's been blocked at every turn from getting a warrant because her evidence is circumstantial, and the county DA has found reasons to delay review 3 times in a row. The county DA is connected, Jimmy said, or cautious in a direction that benefits someone, Hector said, which was the same thing said differently. She says if she can establish Foal's physical presence at the guard placement on or around the dates children went missing, she can take it to the state DA and go over the county. He looked at Cole. She wants to meet. When? Now. She'll drive from Carver. 2 hours. Where? Hector looked at the table. She suggested a neutral location. There's a truck stop on Route 31 outside of Millhaven. Denny's, 24 hours. She says she can be there by 5. Cole looked at the dead fire, at the cold lodge around them, at the road outside the window, empty and bright with pressed snow under a sky that was still hours from any kind of dawn. Millhaven, he said. That's where the warehouse is. I know, Hector said. You're thinking about that. I'm thinking about a lot of things, Jimmy said slowly. If Reyes is meeting us in Millhaven at 5, and the warehouse is outside Millhaven, we're not going to the warehouse, Hector said. I know we're not, Jimmy said. I'm saying someone else might be at the warehouse at 5 in the morning. If they know we've been making calls, if they know their timeline is compromised. He paused. If they're moving something. The sentence ended there. The thing that something referred to did not need to be said. Cole stood up. He went to the kitchen and ran cold water from the tap and stood over the sink for a moment, looking at his hands under the water. The water was very cold. He could feel his pulse in his fingertips. He turned it off and stood there with wet hands in the cold kitchen. He was thinking about Vera. He was thinking about brake lines and clear roads and a curve she had driven 300 times. He was thinking about the 8 months he had spent not believing it and not being able to prove anything else, and the moment he had decided to stop carrying it, and how stopping carrying it had not been the same as putting it down, just the same as redistributing the weight so he could still walk. He was thinking about Danny, an 8-year-old who cried at night and had been happy because a man in a white van told him he was going to a better place. He dried his hands on his jeans and went back to the main room. We go to Millhaven, he said. We meet Reyes at 5, but we drive past the warehouse first. Hector looked at him. Not in, Cole said. Past. I want to see it. I want to know what we're talking about when we talk about it. A long moment. Then Hector nodded. We take 2 bikes in the truck, he said. Jimmy drives the truck. Cole and I ride. He looked at Jimmy. If anything looks wrong at the warehouse, wrong traffic, wrong lights, wrong anything, we don't stop. We go straight to the Denny's and we wait for Reyes. Jimmy said, and if something looks very wrong? Hector picked up his phone. Then we call Reyes from the road. They left the lodge at 3:15. The road out of the hills was black ice under a skim of new powder, which made the first 40 minutes a sustained act of physical concentration that left no room for anything else, just the road, the angle of the bike, the feel of the surface through the tires, the wind cutting through the thermal under Cole's jacket and finding the specific cold place behind his sternum that never fully warmed in winter. Hector rode 20 feet behind him and slightly left, the way they always positioned on uncertain roads, each rider able to see the other's line and adjust. Jimmy's truck followed at distance. They came down out of the hills at 4 and picked up the county road toward Millhaven, and the landscape changed from hill and tree line to flat industrial margin. The kind of territory that exists between places where the county stops maintaining the road shoulders and the businesses are distribution facilities and machine shops and storage yards with chain link and halogen perimeter lighting. The Brixton Logistics Warehouse was on Sutter Industrial Road, 3/4 of a mile off the county road, behind a facility that manufactured agricultural equipment and had been half dark since a production cut 2 years ago. Cole saw the light from a 1/4 mile out. Not perimeter lighting, something interior, a diffused glow coming through high windows on the east side of the building. The kind of light that comes from work lamps or portable floods, the kind of light you bring when you're working at 4 in the morning and you don't want the light visible from the road, but you need enough to see what you're doing. He did not stop. He held his speed and rode past the Sutter Road turnoff without decelerating, watching the building in his peripheral vision, reading it the way he read roads, texture, angle, what it was doing and what it implied. Two vehicles in the lot. One was a white panel van. The other was a dark SUV he didn't recognize. No county markings, no logos. Just two vehicles in a lot outside a building listed as inactive, with interior work lights on, at 4 in the morning. He rode another 300 yards and pulled to the shoulder. Hector pulled up beside him. They sat for a moment without speaking, engines idling, breath coming in clouds. Jimmy's truck came up behind them and stopped. "White van," Hector said. "Yeah. It could be anyone." "It could," Cole said. They looked at each other in the dark. Cole's phone buzzed in his jacket. He pulled it out. Unknown number. Different from the one the night before. He answered it. Silence for 2 seconds. Then a voice. Not the same controlled voice from the night before. Female. Young. Tight with something that sounded like it was being held together by effort. "Are you the man with the Iron Shepherd patch? The one who found the girl?" Cole looked at Hector. "Who is this?" "My name is Sasha." A pause. "I was at Mrs. Guard's. I took Emma's number from Mrs. Guard's phone before I left. Emma had it in her sock. I didn't know who else to call." The breath went out of Cole slowly. Sasha, the 12-year-old who didn't speak to anyone but had once slipped Emma a granola bar without explanation. "Where are you?" Cole said. "I'm outside. The warehouse on Sutter Road. I've been here for an hour. I didn't know what to do. There are kids inside. I can hear them." The sentence rearranged everything. "Sasha." Cole kept his voice level, an exercise of will that cost him more than he could have measured. "How many?" "I don't know. 3, maybe 4. I heard crying. A little one." A pause, ragged at the edge. "There's a man inside, the van man, and someone else. I think they're getting ready to move them. There's a truck. Out back. I can see it from where I'm standing." Cole looked at Hector. He watched Hector's face absorb the information word by word. The controlled thing it always was cracking very slightly at the foundation, just enough to see what was underneath. "Sasha," Cole said, "I need you to stay where you are. Stay hidden. Don't go toward the building." He was already off the bike. "What are you wearing?" "Dark blue jacket. I'm by the fence, east side." "Don't move. I'm coming to you." He hung up. Looked at Hector. "Call Reyes. Right now. Tell her Sutter Industrial Road. Tell her there are children inside. Tell her to move." Hector was already dialing. Cole said to Jimmy, "Pull the truck across the Sutter Road turnoff. Block it. Nobody drives that van or that truck out without going through you." Jimmy's face did not change. He said, "Understood." He put the truck in gear. Cole looked at Hector. "How long for Reyes?" Hector had the phone to his ear. He held up 3 fingers, then 2. He was listening. Then, "She was already in Millhaven. She left early." He looked at Cole. 20 minutes. "I don't have 20 minutes, Cole said. "If they're moving those kids—" "Cole." Hector grabbed his arm. His grip was hard. "You go in there alone and you spook them. They move the kids faster, or something worse happens." He held Cole's eyes. 20 minutes. We contain the exit. We have eyes on the building. We wait for Reyes." Cole looked at the building, at the diffused light in the high windows, at the white van in the lot. He thought about Danny going to a better place. 15, he said. "If Reyes isn't here in 15, I'm going to get Sasha." He didn't wait for Hector's answer. He moved along the fence line in the dark, hugging the shadow of the agricultural facility's perimeter wall, boots finding the frozen ground quietly, the cold so specific now it felt like something applied directly to his skin. He moved fast but controlled, the way he had learned to move in situations where moving wrong was the same as not moving at all. He found Sasha 40 yards along the east fence. She was crouched between a dumpster and the fence post, arms around her knees, a dark blue jacket that was too thin for this temperature, and a face that was... She was older than he'd pictured. 12, Emma had said, but she looked older than that in the way children look older when they have been required to be. Dark eyes, jaw set, the particular expression of someone who is terrified and has decided not to perform it. She looked at him, at the patch, at his face. "You're the biker," she said. "Yeah." he said. "You're Sasha." "Yeah." "You okay?" "No." Direct. No self-pity in it, just the fact. "There's a little one in there. I could hear him. He sounds like Danny." Cole looked at the warehouse wall. 6 feet from where they crouched, the cinder block rose to the high windows. He could hear something now that he hadn't been able to hear from the road, the low rumble of a diesel engine from the back of the building. Not idling, warming up. "They're getting ready," Sasha said. She had heard it too. "The truck. They're going to load them." Cole pulled out his phone. Texted Hector, one word. "Truck warming." Hector's response came back in 8 seconds. "Reyes, 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Diesel truck warming up. 3 or 4 children inside." Cole made the calculation. He made it in the time it took to breathe in and out once, and he knew when he exhaled that he had already made it before he started. "Stay here," he said to Sasha. "Behind the dumpster. Don't come out until you hear me say your name. Not for anything." She grabbed his sleeve. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to make sure they don't leave in the next 12 minutes. She looked at him. She had the eyes of someone who had learned not to believe things people said before they left. He held her gaze for a moment, not reassuring, not promising, just present, and she let go of his sleeve. He moved along the east wall toward the back of the building. The diesel sound got louder as he rounded the corner, not subtle, a sustained throaty rumble that the cold amplified and flattened at the same time. The truck was a medium-sized freight vehicle backed up to a loading dock on the north end of the building, brake lights still on, exhaust rising in a thick white column into the dark air. A man was at the dock, not Foal, someone else, heavy set, working the dock gate with the methodical speed of someone on a schedule. Cole stayed in the shadow of the perimeter wall and assessed. One man at the dock, Foal presumably inside. The dark SUV in the front lot could mean a third person. The front entrance was around the corner, corrugated steel roll-up door, side entry door beside it, likely the way Foal used to go in and out without the full dock opening. He needed the truck to not move for 12 minutes. He pulled out his phone and sent Hector a second text. "Dock north side. One man. Need eyes on front." Then he moved. He came around the northeast corner of the building fast and quiet, covering the 20 feet to the truck in the compressed time of a man who is committed to something and is no longer weighing it. The man at the dock had his back to the approach, bent over the dock gate mechanism, focused on getting it latched. Cole was on him before the sound of boot on frozen ground registered. He didn't hit him. He made contact with enough controlled force to pin the man against the dock gate with one forearm across his upper back and his other hand flat on the back of the man's neck. Not violent, just absolute. The man went rigid. "Don't," Cole said. One word. Quiet. The kind of quiet that has nothing uncertain in it. The man didn't move. "The truck stays here," Cole said. "Your hands stay where I can see them. You're going to stand right there until someone else arrives and tells you what happens next. Are we clear?" A moment. Then, "Clear." High, thin, scared. "Good." Cole held him there and texted Hector with his free hand, which was a feat of physical coordination that required exactly the focus he had, and not one fraction more. "Dock secure." "Front?" "Hector." "I'm at the front." "Reyes, 9 minutes." 9 minutes. Cole stood at the dock with his arm across a stranger's back and listened to the building. Through the corrugated wall he could hear, not clearly, not words, but the texture of sounds inside. Movement. Something dragged on concrete. A voice. Adult. Male. The cadence of instruction. And under all of it, barely audible, the thing that Sasha had described. A small sound. A child sound. The particular tenor of a little one trying not to make noise because they had learned that making noise made things worse. Cole's forearm pressed harder against the dock gate. 8 minutes. Inside the building, something changed. The adult voice stopped. A pause. Then footsteps. Heavier, coming toward the dockside. The man under Cole's arm went very still. He'd heard it too. The dock door opened from inside. Darren Foal was not what Cole had assembled in his mind over the years of not thinking about him. He had built something specific from nothing, from Vera's description of a man who made her uncomfortable in a specific way, from the weight of what that discomfort had apparently cost her. He had built something that looked like what it was. But the man who stepped through the dock door was 50-something, medium height, a forgettable face under a knit cap, wearing a canvas work jacket with the Brixton Logistics logo on the chest. He looked like a foreman. He looked like someone's uncle. He looked like a man you would not look at twice. He saw Cole and stopped. His face did something. Not panic, not surprise. Something more controlled than either. Recalculation. Cole had seen it before on the faces of men who were used to managing situations and were doing a rapid assessment of whether this one was manageable. "Mr. Ryder," Fole said. The use of his name confirmed everything. Fole knew who he was. Had known before tonight. "The children inside," Cole said. His voice came out lower than he intended. "How many?" Fole looked at the man pinned against the dock gate, assessed, looked back at Cole. "This is a transportation operation. Everything you're looking at here is licensed and—" "How many?" Cole said. "You are making a serious mistake. Fole!" Cole came off the dockman and moved toward Fole in 2 steps, and stopped 18 inches from him, and something in his face or his posture or the quality of stillness he was carrying must have communicated something that the careful managed voice in Fole's chest did not have a protocol for, because Fole went quiet. "I'm going to stand here until law enforcement arrives. You are not going to get in that truck. Nobody is going anywhere." He paused. "But if you want to make one decision tonight that costs you less than all the others, you can tell me how many children are inside and whether any of them need medical attention. That's the only choice left on the table." Fole looked at him for a long moment. The calculation was visible, not on his face, which remained the forgettable foreman's face, but in the time he took. Assessing what Cole knew, what Cole could prove, what the next 20 minutes looked like from each available angle. Then the dockman made a mistake. He had been standing still against the gate since Cole released him, hands visible, complying. But compliance was a calculation too, and apparently his calculation had just updated because he moved, fast, sideways, reaching for the inside of his jacket. Cole was already turning. He caught the man's wrist before the hand cleared the jacket and used the momentum of the reach to redirect it. A technique born from years of situations where violence was the thing you were trying to manage rather than administer. And the man went down hard against the dock, shoulder first, and the sound of that impact was very loud in the cold air. But in the second, his attention had been on the dockman. Fole had moved. Not toward the truck, toward the side door. He was fast for a forgettable man, already at the door, already pulling it open, and Cole understood in the fraction of a second he had to understand it that Fole was not running. Fole was going back inside, and inside was where the children were, and a man who understood his position was over and had nothing left to manage was a different and more dangerous thing than a man who still thought he had options. Cole hit the side door 3 seconds after Fole. The interior of the warehouse hit him as a single composite sensation. Cold concrete and motor oil, and the sharp fluorescent wash of 2 work lamps on stands. The space vast and half-dark beyond their radius. The back half of the building in shadow, and in that shadow, a shape that it took his eyes 1 second to resolve into what it was. A sectioned area built from temporary partition walls, the kind used for office dividers, creating an enclosed space roughly 20 by 20 in the far corner of the warehouse. From behind those partitions, sound. Children, more than one. The small sound Sasha had described, and under it something else. A child saying something, not crying, just talking. A low repetitive murmur, the kind of sound children make when they are trying to keep themselves in the present moment by narrating it. Cole moved toward it. Fole had stopped 6 feet inside the door. He was standing between Cole and the partition. He had something in his hand, not a weapon, a phone. He was looking at the screen, sending something or receiving something. His thumb was moving. Cole crossed the distance in 4 steps and took the phone out of his hand. Fole let him take it. He was past the point of physical resistance. Something in him had closed down. The management, the calculation. And what was left was a man standing in a lit warehouse at 4 a.m. with the architecture of years of careful maneuvering coming down around him. And his face in that moment was just a face. Just the face of someone who had done specific terrible things and was now in the room with the consequences. Cole looked at the phone screen. A message, half composed, to a contact labeled only with initials. 2 words typed, compromised, abort. He pocketed the phone. He looked at Foal. "Sit down," he said. "On the floor, right here." Foal sat. Cole went to the partition. The door to the enclosed space was a standard interior door, handle locked. He tried it, locked. He knocked. 1 knock, not hard. "It's okay," he said, keeping his voice level, low, non-threatening. "I'm not going to hurt anyone. My name is Cole. I'm going to get you out." Silence for 3 seconds. Then a small voice. "Are you the police?" "No," he said. "I'm a friend." The word felt inadequate. It was the only word he had. "Is anyone hurt in there?" A pause, then, "Marcus is sick. He's been sick for 2 days." Marcus. One of them had a name now. Cole filed it and kept moving. He stepped back and looked at the partition construction. It was freestanding, not anchored, the panels slotted into wheeled bases. He found the edge of the partition adjacent to the door, gripped it, and moved it. The whole section rolled 18 inches before the base caught on a floor irregularity and stopped. But 18 inches was enough. A gap at the corner, where the partition met the adjacent wall. He crouched down. Through the gap, darkness, and in the darkness, 3 shapes. 2 children sitting against the back wall of the enclosure, 1 smaller shape lying on a folded tarp. An 8-year-old with a round face and dried tear tracks sat up when Cole appeared in the gap and looked at him with the expression of someone who has stopped believing that things change and is revising that belief in real time, uncertain if the revision is safe. Danny. Cole recognized him from Emma's description, not specifically, but from the shape of what she'd described. The crying-at-night boy. The one who had been happy because a man had told him a better place was coming. "Hey, Danny," Cole said. The boy went completely still. "How do you know my name?" "Emma told me," Cole said. Something happened in Danny's face, just for a second. A fracture in the held-together thing, a flash of something young and devastated and uncontrolled. And then he put it back. He put it back with the specific effort of someone who has had to learn that letting it out in the wrong place at the wrong time is dangerous. He put it back and he just nodded. "Can you move?" Cole said. "All of you?" Danny looked at the shape on the tarp. "Marcus can't walk so good. He's got a fever." Cole assessed the gap, looked at the partition base. He stood up and drove his boot into the base of the partition, and the wheel mechanism broke on the second impact, and the panel dropped and the whole section tilted, and he caught it and laid it sideways, and now there was an opening 4 feet wide. He went in. Marcus was 7. He was small for 7, with a fever that had the glazed, specific wrongness of something that had been running too long. Cole put his hand on the boy's forehead and felt the heat, and did not let his face show what it felt. "We're going to carry you," Cole said. "Is that okay?" Marcus looked at him. His eyes were half focused, but they were tracking. "Okay," he said very quietly. The third child was a girl of about 9 who had not said anything yet. She was standing against the back wall watching Cole with an expression that was not exactly distrust and not exactly trust, and contained a very precise assessment of the situation in progress. She had a bruise along her left jaw that had been there long enough to be yellowing at the edges. Cole looked at her. "You ready to go?" She looked at Danny. He nodded. She nodded. Cole gathered Marcus and stood up with the boy's weight against his chest, one arm under his knees, and moved back through the opening into the main warehouse space. Danny and the girl came through behind him. Foal was still on the floor where Cole had left him. He did not look up. Cole got to the side door and pushed it open with his shoulder, the cold hitting them all immediately. Marcus flinching against it, Danny making a small sound. The dockman was still down where he'd fallen, sitting against the gate now, with his shoulder against the corrugated wall, not going anywhere. Cole's phone buzzed. "Hector, she's here, coming in now." And from around the front corner of the building came Hector, and behind Hector a woman in a dark jacket, compact, dark-haired, with the particular quality of someone who has been awake for 20 hours and does not appear to notice. And behind her, Two vehicles Cole had not heard arrive, headlights dark, rolling into the lot without drama. More people getting out. Detective Marta Reyes saw Cole at the dock with Marcus in his arms and the other two children behind him, and she stopped for one full second. Just one. Then she was moving toward them. "I need a medic," Cole said, before she could speak. "Already called," she said. She looked at Marcus, at the fever in his face. "How long?" 2 days, minimum," Cole said. She turned to the people who had come with her and said two sentences that Cole didn't process because he was looking at Danny, who was standing in the cold outside the warehouse door with his arms wrapped around himself, looking at the sky, looking at it like he was checking that it was still the same sky, like he needed to verify that the sky existed and that he was under it. Cole shifted Marcus and crouched slightly so he was at Danny's level. "Hey," he said, "you're out." Danny looked at him, then at the sky again. "Is Emma okay?" he said. Cole looked at him, this 8-year-old with the dried tear tracks and the round face and the enormous specific question, and for a moment the cold and the halogen lights and the sound of Reyes directing her people inside the warehouse and the distant sound of Hector's voice on his phone, and all of it receded to the periphery, and there was just this question and the person who had asked it. "Yeah," Cole said. "Emma's okay." Danny nodded. He looked at the sky one more time. Then he wrapped his arms tighter around himself and stood there in the cold and breathed. And Cole stood up with Marcus against his chest and breathed too. And the warehouse behind them was filling with sound now. Reyes's people moving through it, Foal being taken somewhere in the formal way, the dockman's voice rising and being quieted. And from the fence line came Sasha, finally, because she had heard Cole say her name when he'd called for her while carrying Marcus out. And she came across the frozen ground at a half-run, her too thin jacket, her 12-year-old face that looked 40, and she slowed when she saw the children, and she stopped. She looked at Danny, Danny looked at her. "You came back," he said. "I didn't go anywhere," she said. She sat down on the frozen dock and pulled her knees up, and Danny sat beside her, and the girl with the yellowing bruise sat on his other side. And the three of them sat in a row in the cold while around them the machinery of consequence. Reyes's investigation, the paramedics arriving, Hector at the perimeter, Jimmy's truck still blocking the road, went about the business of dismantling what Foal had built. And Cole stood with a 6-7-year-old boy against his chest and felt the specific weight of him, the heat of the fever through the boy's shirt, the trust that a child extends when they let you carry them. His phone rang. The screen said, "Priest." He answered it. Priest's voice. "Emma's asking about you." Cole closed his eyes, opened them. "Tell her we found Danny." A pause. Then Priest's voice, the careful, measured voice of a man who sees everything and rarely shows any of it. "Hold on." A moment of muffled sound, then a small voice, clear, specific, 7 years old. "Danny's okay?" "Danny's okay," Cole said. A pause so long he thought the connection had dropped. Then, "Are you coming back?" Marcus shifted against his shoulder. The cold pressed down on all of them. Inside the warehouse, Marta Reyes's voice was issuing calm, specific instructions to the people she had brought with her. Hector was visible at the corner of the building, on his phone, not looking at Cole, but oriented toward him the way he always was in situations. That peripheral attention that had kept both of them alive through more than one night that should have gone differently. Cole looked at the dock, at the 3 kids in a row, at the frozen ground, at the sky that Danny had needed to check on. "Yeah," he told Emma. "I'm coming." The paramedics arrived 7 minutes after Reyes's people went into the building, which meant someone had called them before Cole had asked, which meant Reyes had come prepared for what she expected to find, which told Cole something about how long she had been carrying the weight of this particular case and how precisely she had understood what it contained. Marcus went on the stretcher without resistance. He was past the point of resisting things. He let them put the blanket around him, and he let them check his temperature, and he let them start an IV line in his small arm with the passive cooperation of a child whose body had learned that what adults did to you was simply what happened, and you endured it, and you waited to see what came next. Cole stood back and let them work and watched the boy's face and saw the moment when the warmth of the blanket registered, Not in an expression, just in the way the tension went out of his shoulders by a fraction, the body's involuntary acknowledgement that something had changed. Danny stayed on the dock. He had not moved from the spot where he and Sasha and the girl, whose name, Cole learned from Reyes's intake process in the next 20 minutes, was Leah, had sat down together. He sat between them in the cold with his arms around his knees and watched the paramedics and Reyes's people and the 2 county vehicles that had arrived behind Reyes, not Harlan County, Bridger County, a department that Reyes had apparently determined was outside the compromised chain. And he watched all of it with the expression of someone observing a situation they have not yet decided to believe in. Cole sat on the dock beside him. Not close. Nearby. The way you sit near something fragile that you don't want to alarm. Danny looked at him. "You said Emma's okay," he said. Not accusatory, just verifying. "She's in Caldwell with a woman named Maya. She's warm and she slept. Does she know we're out?" "She knows you're out," Cole said. "I told her." Danny nodded. He turned a small stone over in his fingers. He'd picked it up from the ground at some point, which was the kind of detail you noticed about children, the way they anchored themselves to small physical objects in moments when everything else was uncertain. He turned it over. Turned it again. "Mr. Fole told me the better place was a new family," he said. He said it without particular emotion, in the careful tone of someone reporting something that had happened to someone else. He said they had a yard. He said there was a dog. Cole looked at the warehouse door. "I knew it wasn't true," Danny said. "I knew when he said it, but I let myself think maybe." He stopped, turned the stone. "That was stupid." "No," Cole said. "It wasn't." "It was," Danny said. "You shouldn't let yourself think maybe when you know better." Cole looked at him. 8 years old, round face, dried tear tracks, a stone in his hands. He had no adequate response to this, so he didn't try to manufacture one. He sat on the frozen dock with Danny and let the statement exist in the cold air between them. "Emma thinks you're brave," Cole said finally. Danny looked at the ground. Something in his face moved. Fast, almost invisible, the flash of a much younger version of himself before it got put back. "She told you that?" "She didn't have to," Cole said. "She told me you shared the only extra food there was. That you listened when she was scared, that you were still looking out for Leah when she left." He paused. "That's brave. That's not a maybe." Danny turned the stone twice more. Then he put it in his jacket pocket. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. Something in the set of his shoulders changed, very slightly, by a degree that required knowing what you were looking at to see. Hector appeared at Cole's shoulder. "Reyes wants you." Cole stood up. He looked down at Danny. "Stay with Sasha. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Danny looked at Sasha. She looked back at him. She nodded, the way people nod when they are actually guaranteeing something rather than gesturing at it. Cole followed Hector. Marta Reyes was standing at the front corner of the building with a tablet in her hand and the quality of concentration that had been her baseline since she'd arrived. A focused, efficient attention that did not appear to require anything external to sustain it. She was 40, or close to it, with the kind of face that gave you nothing unless she decided to give it to you. She had been in the Bridger County AG's office for 11 years, the last 7 building the case that had just broken open in a warehouse on Sutter Industrial Road at 4:30 in the morning. She looked at Cole when he approached. She did not thank him, which he respected. Thanking him would have been a performance. What she did instead was give him the information directly, which was its own kind of respect. "Fole is in custody," she said. "He's not talking, which is expected. The man at the dock is talking, which is less expected but more useful." She paused. "His name is Gerald Weiss. He's been driving for Brixton for 3 years. He says he didn't know what he was transporting when he started. He says he figured it out after the second run and that he told himself it was a transfer operation, official, licensed, and that he needed the money." She said this flatly, without visible judgment. "He gave me a name." "Above Fole," Cole said. "A caseworker. Harlan County. The one who managed the paperwork for the placements in the Northeast Cluster. His name is Raymond Durr. He's the one who selected the children, created the transfer documentation, and coordinated with Fole on timing." She paused. "He's also the one who called you last night." The controlled voice, the practiced calm, the list of Cole's record and his club affiliation, delivered with the specific weight of someone who managed situations. "He's been picked up," Reyes said. "An hour ago. Bridger County Sheriff. He was at his home. He made no attempt to run, which either means he thought he was insulated or he understood it was over." "Is it over?" Cole said. Reyes looked at him steadily. "For Durr and Foal, yes. For the full operation." She paused. "The initials on Foal's phone. The contact he was trying to message when you took the phone. We have the number. We're tracing it. What's above Durr is larger, and it's going to take longer." She held his gaze. "But the clearinghouse is broken. The chain is broken. The 7 children from the Northeast cluster. We now have confirmed locations on 4 of them through Weiss. The other 3 are going to take longer. They went further." She said the last part in the same flat tone, but something under it changed. Not cracked, just changed, the way metal sounds different under pressure than at rest. Cole looked at the warehouse. "The 4th child," he said. "There were 3 inside. Danny, Marcus, Leah. Emma is 4. You said 4 confirmed locations. Does that mean—" "The 4th is in a facility in Bridger County," Reyes said. "A boy, 6 years old. He was moved there 8 days ago. He's physically unharmed." She paused. "His name is recorded as unnamed intake in the Harlan County system. He arrived at the guard placement and was moved before the children there could learn his name. The boy with no name, the one who had arrived in the dark 2 weeks before Emma ran. His name is Marco," Cole said. Reyes looked at him. "Emma said he came and nobody told the children his name. But she figured it out. She heard Mrs. Guard on the phone." He paused. "She told me the first morning. I didn't know it mattered yet." Reyes was quiet for a moment. Then she made a note on her tablet. "Marco," she said. "That helps." They stood in the cold for another moment. "Mrs. Guard," Cole said. "In custody as of 40 minutes ago," Reyes said. "She's cooperating fully, which tells you what kind of person she is. The cooperation comes easy because the loyalty was never deep. She was paid. She'll give everyone above her to reduce what's below her." She looked at her tablet. "Sandra Park." Cole waited. "Park's involvement is under review. What I can tell you is that she received calls from Durr at least twice in the last 6 months. Whether those calls were coercive or collaborative is something we don't have clarity on yet." Reyes looked at him. "I'm not going to tell you which way it's going to land. I don't know yet." Cole thought about Park in the hallway with her clipboard. The professional warmth. The 12 minutes. She mentioned you. The way she'd said it, like it meant something to her. He thought about the way Emma had been still when the deputy was mentioned. Not still in the way she'd been still with Park. Different with Park. Not comfortable, but different. "She didn't feel like part of it," he said. "It wasn't a defense, just an observation." "People in compromised systems don't always know they're in them," Reyes said. "That's what makes the system effective." She tucked the tablet under her arm. "I'm going to need statements from you and your people. Not tonight. Tomorrow or whenever. I understand the last 48 hours have been considerable." She paused. "I also need to tell you that the way this happened, the approach you made to Weiss at the dock, entering the warehouse, there are procedural questions." "I know," Cole said. "I'm noting in my report that you secured the exit point and were present when I arrived with jurisdiction and authority," she said. "I'm noting that the children were located in a locked enclosure and that my team made entry. The details of how the perimeter was established before my arrival are—" She paused. "Somewhat flexible in the documentation, depending on how the question is framed." Cole looked at her. "Why?" "Because Marcus has been running a fever for 2 days, and there was a truck warming up to move him," she said. "And because I've been working this case for 7 months, and tonight was the first night the door was open." She held his gaze. "Don't make me regret the flexibility." "You won't," Cole said. She went back to her people. Cole stood at the corner of the building in the early dark and breathed. The cold had not warmed. The sky had not lightened yet. Still that particular absolute dark of the hour before any dawn thought about arriving. But somewhere in it, something had shifted. The stillness of the night had changed from the held stillness of a situation suspended to the tired stillness of something spent. He went back to the dock. Hector was there now, and Jimmy, and between the 4 adults and 3 children, the dock had become a small, specific world. Jimmy had produced a thermos from the truck, coffee, black, which he poured into the thermos lid and handed to Cole without a word. Cole drank it. It was the best coffee he had ever tasted in his life, which was entirely about the hour and the cold and the preceding 30 hours, and nothing to do with the coffee itself, which was the same gas station blend Jimmy always used. Sasha was talking to Leah. Not about anything important, about something else entirely, some memory from before, some piece of ordinary life that she was handing across the cold like a piece of food. Leah was listening, not responding yet, but listening. That was enough. That was the beginning of what came after the worst thing. Danny was asleep. He had folded himself against the dock gate at some point, knees to chest, and gone under completely, the stone still in his jacket pocket, his face in sleep showing the version of him that was 8 years old in the way 8-year-olds are supposed to be 8 years old. Cole looked at him for a long moment. "We need to talk about next steps," Hector said, quiet, coming beside him. "Tomorrow," Cole said. "Cole?" "Tomorrow, Hector." He kept his voice even, not dismissive, just final. "Let it be tonight for 10 more minutes." Hector looked at the dock, at the 3 kids, at Jimmy, who was sitting on the edge of the dock with his feet hanging and his big, quiet presence serving its usual function of making the space feel safer than it had any right to be. At the first gray suggestion of something along the eastern tree line that was not quite dawn, but was the thing that preceded it. 10 minutes, Hector said. They drank their coffee. The drive to Caldwell took 3 hours. Jimmy drove the truck with Danny and Leah in the back seat, both of them asleep within 20 minutes, the specific immediate sleep of children who have been holding themselves awake by effort and have finally been given permission to stop. Sasha was in the front seat beside Jimmy, and she did not sleep. She watched the road with the focused vigilance of someone who had been in charge of herself for long enough that surrender of awareness felt dangerous, and Jimmy drove and said nothing and let her watch. Marcus went to Bridger County General with Reyes's people. Cole had stood beside the ambulance while they loaded him and held the boy's hand until they needed him to step back, and Marcus had looked at him and said, very clearly, for the first time in their acquaintance, "Are you coming to the hospital?" Cole had looked at the ambulance, at Marcus's fever-bright eyes. "I'll come tomorrow," he said. "First thing." Marcus considered this. "Promise?" Cole held his gaze. "Promise," he said. The boy had nodded and let go of his hand, and they closed the doors. Cole rode behind Jimmy's truck the whole way to Caldwell. It was not a good ride. The roads were better than the previous night, but his body had been keeping count of everything. The last 2 days had cost it, and the cold was a sustained pressure against every joint, and the shoulder that had been reconstructed twice made its objection known somewhere around the second hour in a sharp, specific language that he couldn't ignore and chose to bear. He rode through it. The road required his attention, and he gave it his attention, and the miles went under the wheels, and the sky came lighter by degrees, gray first, then the particular pale gold of a winter sunrise that doesn't have enough warmth in it to actually change the temperature, but changes something else. The quality of the light, the way shadows fall, the sense of the world reestablishing itself after the dark. Maya Okafor's house was exactly what Hector had described. A 2-bedroom on a dead-end road, blue siding, a covered porch with 2 chairs on it, a yard that in summer probably showed the evidence of someone who cared about growing things. At 7:40 in the morning, it was pale and cold and perfectly ordinary, and it was the best-looking house Cole had ever seen in his life. Priest Bronco was in the driveway. Cole killed the engine and sat on the bike for a moment before getting off. He was aware of his body in the complete way you become aware of it when it has been pushed far enough that the pushing has become audible. His hands were stiff inside the gloves. His lower back was a single sustained complaint. His eyes felt like they had been dried out and placed back in his head at a slight angle. The front door opened before he reached the porch steps. Emma was in the doorway. She was wearing a sweater that was too big for her. Maya's, probably, or one of Dutch's that had been left here. And her hair was still sleep-compressed on one side, and May was under her arm, and she looked at Cole coming up the porch steps with an expression that went through several things in rapid succession: Relief, assessment, a brief flash of something unguarded that she put away quickly, and then a steadiness that landed. "You're back," she said. "I'm back," he said. She looked at him. Full inventory. The road grime, the exhausted eyes, the shoulder that he was holding slightly wrong. She took all of it in. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "No." "Are you hurt?" "No." She looked at him for one more moment, then she stepped back to let him in the door, which was its own kind of welcome, the kind that doesn't make a performance of itself. Inside the house, Maya Okafor was in the kitchen, making something that smelled of butter and flour. And Priest was at the small kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the particular quality of stillness he had in the aftermath of things, the way he sat when the crisis was over and the accounting had begun. He looked at Cole when he came in and gave him the small, specific nod of a man confirming that the most important thing had been verified. Jimmy came in behind Cole with Danny and Leah and Sasha behind them. And for a moment the small house held all of them at once. The three children taking in the space with their separate reading styles. Danny systematically, Leah cautiously, Sasha with the vigilance she had not set down yet. And Maya came out of the kitchen and looked at them, and her face did something that a lot of people's faces might have done differently, but Maya's did it plainly. It opened. Not perform warmth, just the actual opening of a person who knows what it means to bring a child into a space and mean it. "Breakfast," she said. Not a question. A fact. The children looked at each other. "Yeah," Danny said. They ate at Maya's kitchen table. All of them. The children and the men and Sasha, who was 12 and somewhere between both categories. And the kitchen was not large enough for the number of people in it, which meant elbows touching and chairs scooted and the particular compressed warmth of too many bodies in a small room, which on this particular morning was not a problem, but a solution to something that hadn't had a name until right now. Emma sat beside Cole. She didn't say much during breakfast. She ate 2 portions, which was more than he'd seen her eat in one sitting since the diner. And she watched Danny with the specific attention of someone who needed to see with their own eyes what they'd been told by phone. Danny caught her looking and made a face at her, the kind of face you make at someone who's being obvious about something. And Emma looked back at her plate and something happened at the corner of her mouth that was not quite a smile but was the structural precursor to one. After breakfast, the children were moved to the living room where Maya had set up a situation with blankets and the television and a quiet industry that suggested she had done this particular transition many times. The art of moving children from crisis to ordinary without marking the border too clearly, letting them cross it themselves. Cole sat at the cleared kitchen table with Hector and Priest and Jimmy, and the 4 of them held the particular silence of men on the other side of something when the body has stopped running on emergency fuel and what's underneath is starting to show. Hector spoke first. He laid it out. All of it. The legal architecture of the next several days, the things Reyes had communicated, the status of the Carla Brooks kinship application, which Pat Solis had confirmed was moving through the state channel and had, as of this morning, been elevated to emergency priority given the circumstances. Carla Brooks had been called. She was driving from Shelton. She would arrive before noon. "Danny and Leah and Marcus," Cole said. "What's the process for them?" "Reyes is coordinating with the state welfare office, bypassing Harlan County entirely," Hector said. "There's an emergency placement review. The 3 remaining children from the Northeast cluster that Weiss gave locations on, they're being assessed now. It's going to take time. The right kind of time. With the right people." "Sasha," Cole said. Priest said, "She's 17 in February. She ages out of the system in under a year regardless." He paused. "She came back for the other children. She was outside that warehouse for an hour before she called. She had the number in her sock for 4 days." He looked at his coffee. "She knew what the van meant, and she still came back." Nobody said anything for a moment. "She can stay here as long as she needs to," Maya said from the counter, where she had moved without any of them noticing, refilling the coffee pot. She said it in the tone of someone stating a logistical fact that had already been decided. "Dutch's sister doesn't need anyone's permission to have a house guest." Hector looked at her. Something passed between them that Cole couldn't fully read but recognized as long familiarity. "I'll make some calls," Hector said. "You'll drink your coffee first," Maya said. He drank his coffee. At 10:47, Cole went to find Emma. She was in the back bedroom, the one she'd been sleeping in, the one Maya had set up as hers for however long hers lasted. She was sitting on the floor with May in her lap, and she had found, somewhere, a piece of paper and a pen, and she was drawing something. Cole leaned in the doorway. "Can I come in?" he said. She looked up. "It's not your house," she said. Technically factual, not unfriendly. He came in and sat on the floor across from her. His knees complained. He folded them anyway. She looked at his knees and then at his face. "What are you drawing?" he said. She angled the paper so he could see it. It was a house. The simple architectural shorthand of a child's drawing. Square body, triangle roof, rectangle door. 2 windows with curtains suggested. In front of the house, 3 figures of approximately equal size and 1 smaller one. The smallest figure had something under its arm. A small rectangle with a head shape on top. "May," Cole said, nodding at the small figure's arm. "Yeah." "Who are the others?" Emma looked at the drawing. "I don't know yet," she said. "I'm still figuring out who lives there." Cole looked at the drawing for a long moment. He thought about his cabin outside Kenner Ridge, the 2 chairs at the kitchen table, the coffee maker that made 1 cup at a time, the particular quality of its silence, which he had spent 11 years calling peace, and which he was now sitting on a bedroom floor in Caldwell with his wrecked shoulder and his 36 hours without sleep, beginning to reconsider the name of. "Emma," he said, "your Aunt Carla is coming today." She looked up immediately, the full weight of her attention. "She's driving from Shelton right now," he said. "She should be here around noon." Emma's face did something complicated and layered that happened too fast to catalog. Hope and fear, and the specific guardedness of someone who has been told things before that didn't happen. And then she set May down carefully on her knee and said, in a voice that was keeping itself level by effort, "She's actually coming? She's actually coming. Not, they're not sending me somewhere else first? Not, she's coming here?" "Here," Cole said. "Today. Before noon." Emma looked at May. She adjusted the doll's head slightly, the habitual attending gesture. Her jaw was tight. "What if she stopped. "What if the apartment is still too small?" "The apartment question is handled," Cole said. "Different people are looking at it now. People who aren't connected to what was wrong before." Emma processed this. It took a moment. "How do you know?" "Because Hector knows people," Cole said. "And when Hector knows people, things get looked at properly." She turned this over. "And if it doesn't work out, Emma?" He waited until she looked at him. "One thing at a time. Your aunt is coming. That's real and it's happening. Let that be the thing right now." She held his gaze. The calculation happened. Visible, deliberate. The weighing of what it cost to believe something against what it cost not to. Then she looked down at May. "Okay," she said. He started to get up. His knees made themselves heard. "Cole." He stopped. Emma was looking at him. She had the expression she sometimes got, the one that was older than 7 and younger than 7 simultaneously, the one that meant she was about to say something she had been holding for a while. "Why did you stay?" she said. "At the diner. You didn't have to. You could have just told someone else and gone." He looked at her. He thought about how to answer this honestly, which meant thinking about all the answers that were true, but not the whole truth. That she'd looked cold, that it was the right thing, that he was there and she was there, and those facts had created an obligation. All of that was true. None of it was complete. "You asked me if it was safe," he said, "and then you trusted my answer. I didn't want that to be a mistake." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked back at the drawing. "It wasn't," she said. He left her to it and went back to the kitchen. Carla Brooks arrived at 11:52. She drove a 10-year-old Honda with one headlight slightly lower than the other, and she parked it crooked in the road because the driveway was full, and she was out of the car before the engine had finished settling. She was 34, with the same dark eyes as her sister and the same dark eyes as Emma, and she had clearly been crying in the car and had equally clearly decided she was done with that for the moment. And she came up the porch steps with the focused energy of someone who has been waiting for something for a very long time and is not going to waste the arrival of it. Maya met her at the door and said something quiet, and Carla nodded and they went into the house, and for a moment Cole and Hector and Jimmy, who were on the porch, heard nothing from inside. Then they heard Emma's voice. Not words, just the sound, high, a little ragged, the sound of something giving way that had been held very tight for a very long time. The men on the porch looked at the road, at the yard, at the pale winter sky, at nothing, with the careful attention of people giving something its privacy. Jimmy cleared his throat. "Coffee," he said, and went inside, which was the most graceful exit Cole had ever seen him make. Hector stood beside Cole on the porch and said nothing. They could hear from inside the murmur of voices, and once, clearly, Emma saying something about May, and once Carla's voice saying something that ended with, "I know, baby, I know," and then the voices went quieter and further back in the house. "That's one," Hector said finally. Cole looked at him. "One person in the right place," Hector said. "One thing that works the way it's supposed to." Cole looked at the road, at the Honda parked crooked, at the bare winter trees beyond the yard. "3 kids still to find," he said. "From the 7. Reyes knows," Hector said. "It's not ours to carry alone." "I know." "Do you?" Cole was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to visit Marcus tomorrow," he said. "I promised him." Hector said nothing. "And someone needs to make sure the 17 in February situation gets real attention, not just a form." "I'll make the calls," Hector said. "And Danny." Cole stopped. He looked at the yard. Danny said he let himself think maybe about the better place with the yard and the dog, and then he called himself stupid for it. Hector was very still. "He's 8 years old," Cole said, "and he's already taught himself not to think maybe." The porch was quiet. "What do you want to do about that?" Hector said, and his voice had the quality it had on the porch 2 nights ago, the quality of a question that is actually a mirror. Cole thought about a cabin outside Kenner Ridge, a kitchen table with 2 chairs, a coffee maker that made 1 cup, the particular silence he had called peace. He thought about Danny's stone in his jacket pocket, about Sasha watching the road in the truck's passenger seat, about Marcus saying promise like the word was the only currency he had left that he trusted, about Emma on the bedroom floor drawing a house and figuring out who lived in it. "I don't know yet," he said, "but I'm thinking about it." Hector nodded. The nod of a man who considers not knowing yet and thinking about it to be a substantial thing, when the person saying it is Cole Ryder, who had spent 11 years not thinking about the things that mattered. "Good," Hector said. They stood on the porch until the cold became something to address rather than something to ignore, and then they went inside. The days that followed did not resolve cleanly. That was the thing about real consequences. They did not arrive in a clean line, but in layers at different speeds, some of them weeks behind the event that caused them. Reyes's investigation moved forward, and the DA's review moved forward, and the county chain got pulled apart strand by strand, and some of the strands led somewhere definitive, and some of them frayed out into uncertainty, and Raymond Durr, the man with the controlled voice and the practiced calm, took a deal in late January that gave the state what they needed to go up the chain and gave him what he thought he needed, which was the smaller version of the consequence. And whether that was justice was a question Cole turned over sometimes and didn't come to a final answer on. Sandra Park was cleared of intentional involvement. She was found to have been manipulated through her professional channel, calls from Durr framed as legitimate case coordination, information she had provided in good faith, used in ways she hadn't understood and hadn't been designed to question. She was reassigned pending review, and she cooperated fully. And Cole, when he heard this, thought about her in the hallway with her clipboard, and the 12 minutes and the things she'd said. She mentioned you. And decided that what she had been was someone inside a broken system who hadn't been given the right information to see how it was broken. And that was its own kind of tragedy, not the same as guilt. Marcus got out of the hospital on the 6th day. His fever had broken on the 3rd. He had a social worker named Teresa, who Reyes vouched for, and who Priest independently verified through channels Cole didn't ask about, and the process for finding Marcus appropriate placement moved through the state system rather than the county system, and it moved slowly, but it moved in the right direction, and Marcus, when Cole visited him on day 1, and day 4 and day 6 was gradually and specifically becoming more of himself, whatever that self was going to turn out to be. On day 6, Marcus told Cole about the yard he wanted. "Not for a dog," he said, with the tone of someone who has learned not to want the thing he was told he would get. "Just for being outside without a fence around it." Cole said, "That's a reasonable thing to want." Marcus said, "Do you have a yard?" Cole said, "I've got about 40 acres of national forest." Marcus looked at him with the expression of someone receiving new data. "Is that a lot?" "Yeah," Cole said, "that's a lot." The 3 remaining children from the 7, the ones whose locations Weiss hadn't known, were found over the following 6 weeks through the investigative chain that Reyes was building, each one at a different speed and through a different corridor of the network that had been pulling them through. One was in state care in a facility that turned out to be clean, its records having been falsified to show a county transfer. One was with relatives who had been found through channels that bypassed the county entirely. The third, the case that took 6 weeks and cost Reyes's team the most, was recovered in February, physically okay, which was the bare minimum of okay and the thing they held on to. 7 children. 7. All accounted for eventually, imperfectly, at different costs and different timelines, with the particular rough-edged reality of outcomes that don't let you feel finished, because you know there could have been more of them, and the machinery that created them didn't spring from nowhere and doesn't disappear with the arrests. But all 7. Cole kept his promise to himself about not knowing yet. He let it be not knowing yet for 3 weeks, which was longer than he usually allowed himself to sit with uncertainty. He went back to the cabin outside Kenner Ridge, and he sat in the 2 chairs alternately and made 1 cup of coffee at a time and rode the roads when the weather allowed and did not force an answer. The cabin was the same. The quiet was the same. He was not the same, which changed both. He called Emma every 3 days. She was with Carla in Shelton. The apartment had been assessed by the state review and approved, the square footage question resolved by a judge who apparently agreed with Hector that square footage was a less relevant metric than the presence of someone who loved the child in question. The apartment had a small second room that had been a storage space and was now not a storage space. Emma reported on the arrangement with her characteristic economy of emotion. The apartment was okay. Carla made good eggs. The school in Shelton had a library that Emma approved of. May had been given a specific shelf. She asked about Danny in every call. Danny had been placed with a family in Bridger County through the new review process, a family that Reyes's team had vetted through the state system, that had fostered before, that had, as it happened, a yard without a fence around it. He and Emma had been given each other's numbers, and they texted, which Cole learned about from Emma in the matter-of-fact way she reported things she had decided were not secrets. "He's okay," she told Cole in late January. "He said the family has a garden. They let him help with it even though it's winter. He says they're just planting right now, but he gets to decide what to plant." Cole sat with that for a moment. "That's good," he said. "He said to tell you something," Emma said. "What?" "He said he's thinking maybe again." She said it neutrally, just delivery. "He said you'd know what that means." Cole did know what it meant. He sat in his cabin after the call and looked at the 2 chairs at the kitchen table for a long time. In March, when the roads were clear enough to ride without the sustained, bone-deep effort of winter, Cole rode to Shelton. He didn't call ahead. He told himself it was because he didn't want to create expectation in case something came up, which was technically plausible and also not the real reason. The real reason was that calling ahead would have required him to articulate what he was doing, and he hadn't found the words for it yet, and he was beginning to understand that some things don't arrive in words first. He found the apartment building without difficulty. He parked the Harley on the street and sat on it for a moment looking at the building's front door. A perfectly ordinary building on a perfectly ordinary Shelton street in a March that was still more winter than spring, with the thin, tentative sunlight of a season that hasn't committed yet. He went up. He knocked. Carla Brooks opened the door. She looked at him. The jacket, the patch, the bike visible on the street below through the hallway window, and her expression moved through something quick and decided, and she stepped back to let him in. Emma was at the kitchen table with homework spread around her. She looked up when he came through the door. Her face did the thing it did. The inventory, the assessment, the landing. "You rode," she said, looking at his jacket. Roads are clear, he said. She looked at him for another moment. Then, there's coffee. He sat at the kitchen table while Carla poured him coffee, and Emma went back to her homework. And he sat there in the ordinary morning of someone else's apartment with the coffee and the sound of a pen on paper and the particular quality of a space that has been recently organized around the presence of a child. The shelf with May on it visible through the open door of the small second room, the drawings on the refrigerator, the library book on the counter with a bookmark in it. He drank his coffee. Emma finished a page of homework and looked up at him. "Are you staying for lunch?" she said. He hadn't planned to. He hadn't planned to be here at all, in any formal sense. He looked at the kitchen, at Carla, who was doing something at the counter, and not looking at him, in the particular way of someone who is deliberately not making a decision for someone else. "If that's okay," he said. Emma considered this with the gravity she brought to logistical questions. "We have soup," she said. "Carla makes good soup." "Soup is good," Cole said. She went back to her homework. He sat at the table in a kitchen in Shelton in March with his coffee and the sound of a pen on paper. And outside the window, the thin spring sun was doing its tentative best. And somewhere in the national forest outside Kenner Ridge, 40 acres of trees were continuing to exist without anyone in the cabin below them. And down in the lower 48, along 100 miles of highway and county road and forgotten routes that the Iron Shepherd MC had ridden for 11 years. Hector was making calls and Jimmy was drinking gas station coffee, and Priest was verifying something that needed to be verified. And Danny was planning his garden, and Marcus was asking about yards, and Sasha was 17 in 2 weeks and working toward a version of what came next that she was building herself, with some help from people who had decided she deserved help. The pen moved on paper. The coffee cooled slightly. Carla's soup began its particular smell. Cole looked at Emma's drawing, still on the refrigerator. The house, the 3 figures, the small one with May under her arm. She had added something since he last saw it. 2 more figures standing slightly apart from the others, but clearly within the frame of the same house. One was tall and had something on its arm that might have been a jacket. He looked at it for a long time. He did not ask her about it. He picked up his coffee, which had cooled enough to drink in a long swallow, and he looked out the window at the March sky, which was the blue of a season arriving after a very long winter. And he thought about the cabin and the 2 chairs, and the particular silence he had spent 11 years trying to love enough to be enough. And he thought, maybe. Not maybe like Danny had meant it at first. The desperate maybe of someone trying not to want the thing they'd been promised and couldn't afford to need. A different kind. The kind that comes from the other side of the worst thing, when you have seen what you're actually made of and found that it held, and you're still there, and the world is still there, and the question of what you do with that is open rather than closed. He was still sitting there when Emma finished her homework and got up to help Carla with the soup, and the kitchen got louder with 2 voices coordinating around a small stove, and May watched from her shelf in the small second room with the cloth patience of something that has been carried through every terrible thing and is still here, still under someone's arm, still present. Cole sat at the kitchen table. He was still there. That was the beginning of a different story than the one he'd been living. Not a clean one. Not an easy one. But the longest road he had ever ridden was never the one under his tires. And he was starting to understand that the destination he had been circling for 11 years was not a place on any map he owned. It was this. The soup. The homework on the table. The sound of a child who had survived the unsurvivable telling someone else where to find the bowls. He stayed for lunch. He stayed.